Chapter 1435. In the sky above Tiantang City. The clear sky in the middle was like a giant whirlpool. It caused the clouds in the sky to spin slowly, from slow to fast. It was as if something was about to form, but the person controlling everything behind the scenes was not in a hurry. He moved slowly, as if he was purposely keeping the scene for a little longer. He wanted everyone in the world to see the scene, and the entire process of its formation. Looking at the earth-shattering phenomenon in the sky, countless people sighed inwardly. Too many people could not help but think of the same thing. Such an ability, such a godly skill, such overwhelming power. Could it be controlled by a worldly imperial power? Could it be nurtured? It was utter nonsense. You could nurture civil officials and generals, but could you nurture a god? Countless people were overcome with emotion. It had been 7 years since Supreme Cloud had left. 7 years was a long time to the mundane world. After all, to an ordinary person, a person who had disappeared from their sight for more than half a year, was enough to be forgotten completely. What was more, it had been 7 years. Let me say this, do not think that this is an exaggeration. In our lives, many people have either passed away, or left familiar environments, never to be seen again. Then in a very short time, we would forget about them. Even if they were family or close friends, it would be difficult to remember them after 2 to 3 years. Those who have experienced it can understand, but those who have not, please do not spout nonsense. Only one thing to say. How many of your elementary school classmates can you remember clearly when you're in high school? The clouds in the sky were still spinning freely. The people's senses grew stronger, as if the entire heaven and earth were spinning and dancing with the clouds. Suddenly, with a soft whoosh, the sky that had been obscured by the clouds returned to its clear, cloudless day. All the clouds in the sky, the clouds that were as big as mountains, had disappeared without a trace. While the traces of the clouds were gone, the boundless cloud chi had condensed into a human silhouette. The silhouette was clad in fluttering purple robes, his face handsome and valiant. However, the sole of his foot that stood in the air was almost the size of 2 city gates. Even from thousands of miles away, the giant's face could still be seen clearly. For a time, everyone went silent like cicadas in the winter, and they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Everyone recalled how they had slandered and tarnished Supreme Cloud during this period of time. The giant in the sky sighed softly and said leisurely, "It's been a long time since I've returned. I didn't expect that there would be no trace of the 9 Supremes left in this world." He smiled faintly. If that's the case, the name Supreme Cloud should disappear from this world. How could they forget the past? Who knew how many times they had dreamt of the 9 Supremes dominating the battlefield and helping those in need? However, they had been brainwashed and interpreted over and over again all these years. The landslides back then were actually explosives that had been set up beforehand. The smell of smoke after the battle had already proven this point. And so on, and so on. The change of the weather, and the rise of the lightning, were merely astronomical phenomena that had been predicted a long time ago. The brilliant scholars of the imperial astronomer had repeatedly deduced the season, direction of the wind, and the change in temperature. Finally, they came to the conclusion that the wind and clouds were in their hands, and the lightning and thunder were under their control. There was also the rising of water and fire, and the soaring of blood and chi. The former was caused by digging tunnels and collapsing dams in advance. Countless kerosene had been placed in advance, and when the water surged, the kerosene was poured on top of it. That was how water and fire came together. Water was used to resist fire, and its power was unwavering. The latter was even simpler. That battlefield was not littered with corpses, and blood flowed like rivers. The so-called blood and chi in the sky was just a gimmick for heroes, enemies of 10,000 and experts. The most straightforward example was that those who were twice as strong as an ordinary person would be known as Hercules. Those who were 10 times more powerful than an ordinary person would be considered a superhuman. However, could one defeat 100 people even if he was 10 times more powerful than an ordinary person? The people asked themselves, that's true. Even if I had 10 times more power, and could easily kill 8 to 10 people, I couldn't possibly defeat 100 people. Therefore, those heroes who could wipe out thousands of enemies, were really just an image that the country needed. Now that the world was at peace, there was no need for those heroic images to intimidate people. It was reasonable to tell the truth. All kinds of scientific interpretations, and all kinds of assertions that made people feel as if they had experienced it for themselves, completely reduced the legendary achievements of divine power to nothingness. This left everyone with only one feeling. Wow, so that's how it is. That's reasonable. I said, I'm so powerful, but I can't even kill a dog. Then how could someone else kill 1,000 people like me with one punch? It's obviously a lie. Where is such a person? Why don't you ask him to try and punch me? All kinds of people who understood it were arrogant, disdainful, and cold. All kinds of people who believed in it were ridiculed and despised again and again. Wow, this person is so stupid. He actually believed in a made-up legend. Everyone come and watch this idiot. Over time, all kinds of ridiculous things happened. Coupled with the inaction of the government, and even adding fuel to the fire, the original unwavering belief began to waver. Even if at first they still tried their best to maintain it. I saw it with my own eyes. They did not guard against people coming out immediately, quoting the classics and ridiculing. Brother, did you see that? What is written here is what you saw back then, what you experienced, what you saw with your own eyes. That is the truth. History is not a story, not a fairy tale. How could the people involved not be shaken? Not to mention that the heroes of that time were long gone. They could not reappear and perform miracles to testify for you. Therefore, this kind of argument became more and more popular, until the heroic deeds were completely erased. The truth was completely distorted, and all the achievements were buried. In the end, the people rejoiced. We found the truth again, and confirmed history. At this moment, there was only silence below. When the miracle happened again, when the heroes reappeared and smashed reality right into their faces, everyone felt regret, sincere regret. What they had tried so hard to deny, what they had tried to destroy, what they had tried to humiliate, and what they had purposely trampled on, was actually our backbone, our dignity, our pride, and our beliefs. In the air, Yin Yang chuckled faintly. With a wave of his hand, Lao Mei was already nowhere to be seen. He waved his hand and said faintly, "Haven't you been looking for me to come down and fight you? Why do you have to hide? Let's end this quickly." Ever since Yin Yang appeared, the shadow formed by the gray fog beside Yu Qianquan had wanted to escape, but for some reason, he could not budge an inch. Right now, he was already regretting his actions to the extreme. He had long predicted Yin Yang's capabilities, even thinking that he had overestimated Yin Yang's ability level as much as possible. He was confident that he could deal with him. Even if he could not win in one go, there was still room for negotiation. Who would have thought that Supreme Cloud had only ascended for a few years, but his ability had improved by leaps and bounds? This was no longer a matter of disparity, but a matter of not being able to see it. Up until now, it seemed that the other party was only manipulating the wind and clouds in the air, dominating the heaven and earth. Yu Qianquan did not feel anything out of the ordinary, but he could no longer move. His spiritual energy wanted to dissipate, and he could not even self-destruct. The so-called earth-shattering battle, a battle between a dragon and a tiger, was only a one-sided fantasy, a foolish dream. It turned out that he was the biggest joke in the world. It was like an ant holding a straw stick and saying to a giant dragon, "I want to fight you." The most explosive point of this joke was that the giant dragon had accepted the challenge. It had moved against the ant. What kind of F***ck was this? Yu Qianquan stood where he was, turned into a statue. He was dumbfounded and speechless. His eyes were wide as he stared at Yin Yang, who had turned into a towering giant in the air. The words "ninth uncle" were at the tip of his tongue, but he could not utter them. Yin Yang extended his hand and said faintly, "Come." With a soft swoosh, a ray of golden light shot out from Yin Yang's palm and turned into a golden path. It crossed thousands of feet and came before gray fog. Gray mist. Elder Qin, the founding ancestor of the school of Kismet State, landed on the golden path in a daze uncontrollably. Under the watchful eyes of millions of people, the golden path shortened bit by bit. It shrunk all the way back into Yin Yang's palm. Elder Qin finally appeared in front of Yin Yang. To be exact, he was on Yin Yang's palm. Your surname is Qin? Yin Yang pinched Elder Qin with 2 fingers and looked at him curiously. I heard that you've hidden a lot of your power. Since this is a battle of life and death, we won't rest until one of us is dead. Why don't you call them out for me to see and broaden my horizons? Grey Fog's Elder Qin could not help but tremble, unable to control himself. You still have 6 ghost messengers? Oh no, there are only 5 left now. I've already caught one. It should be the 5 fellows who are attacking my father over there, right? Yin Yang said faintly. Since everyone has shown themselves, let them all come over then. With a swoosh, the 5 strange shadows that were battling Yin Xiaoyao appeared in Yin Yang's hands, as if they were commanded to do so. Yin Yang fiddled with them casually, placing the other 5 spirits together with Elder Qin. The 6 souls were all trembling in Yin Yang's palm. At this moment Elder Qin, the founding ancestor of the school of Kismet State, was not just freaking out. He was basically doubting his own life. What kind of divine power was this? How could anyone in this world possess such boundless power? As for the humiliation of being manipulated in the palm of someone else's hand in front of millions of people, he did not even take it to heart. How could he care about such trivial matters now? I've never understood where you fellows get your courage from. Yin Yang sighed and said, I've already left this world, but you fellows still have to think of ways to bring me back. Do you still want to kill me? Now, I'm standing here as you wish. It's a pity that you fellows. Yin Yang sighed softly. So weak that I'm not even interested in taking a look at you. So weak that I'm not even interested in taking a look at you. Elder Qin could only feel an extreme humiliation surging in his heart. His emotions that had been suppressed to the lowest point surged once more. Supreme Cloud! Elder Qin shouted with all his might. Right now in this situation, it's not that we're too weak, it's that you're too strong. So strong that you're unshakable and unrivaled. We're not on the same level as you at all. If we were to forcefully compare ourselves, it would only be obvious who's superior and who's inferior. What's the point? Yin Yang could not help but chuckle. That's right. But the source of this is you fellows who summoned me here by force. Haven't you fellows thought that I, who has already ascended to the upper realm, am no longer on the same level as you fellows? Shouldn't you have long known that you're asking for humiliation and overestimating your own capabilities, if you insist on fighting me? Now you're bringing this up again. What's there to talk about? Elder Qin was at a loss for words. Yes, why did they summon him? Why did they summon this formidable foe, who had already ascended to the upper realm, and was not on the same level as them? Was everything that was happening before his eyes a suicidal act that hastened his own defeat? At this moment, the regret in his heart was indescribable. Why did they provoke him? Why? He was filled with remorse and wished he could turn back. Yes, as long as Supreme Cloud was killed or defeated, the myth of the 9 Supremes that Supreme Cloud had created would be completely crushed. Then, the providence that Supreme Cloud had used to unify the world could be snatched away through an arcane technique. This was the truth, and it was also a benefit. But how could they kill him? The ant wanted to kill the dinosaur. How could they fight it head-on? Why did he not lay low for a little longer? He had waited for centuries, millennia, and tens of thousands of years. What was the point of waiting a little longer? If he waited for a long time, so long that he had forgotten about this world, when he came out again, would everything not be in his hands? Why was he so eager to succeed? He knew that he was facing someone who had ascended to the upper realm. How could it be so easy to snatch it away? Why was he so eager? The legendary Lord of Heaven still possessed the providence to create a world. Why did he not snatch it away? In this world, although daring to think about it meant that he was halfway to success, one could still fall short of success at the last step, let alone a mayfly trying to shake a tree, or a frog in a well peeking at the sky. My clone's soul isn't nearby, it's scattered all over this continent. It's everywhere, everywhere. Lord Supreme Cloud has defeated me today. But when it comes to defeating me, before Elder Qin could finish his words, he heard Supreme Cloud's faint chuckle. Defeat you? When did I defeat you? If I were to say the word defeat, doesn't that mean I'm treating you as an opponent? Do you think it's more glorious for you to say this? Although Elder Qin was in the form of a soul, he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Yes, when did he defeat you? As the saying went, a horse does not know how long its face is, a bull does not bend its horns, and a man does not know his own strength. Below him, guffaws of laughter could be heard. Yin Yang waved his hand, and beams of dark light emerged from the bodies of many people from all directions. They were like rivers flowing into the sea, rushing towards Yin Yang like moths to a flame. Streak after streak of streak after streak. You've set up 500 remnant souls in and around Tiantang City. How generous! Yin Yang sighed softly. Wuyin, I have to say that I'm surprised that you didn't expose yourself under such circumstances. But I'm even more satisfied. Shui Wuyin, who was below, smiled faintly. He was supporting Yin Xiaoyao, whom he had seen for a long time. Yin Xiaoyao looked at his son in the sky, his eyes filled with pride and longing. Although he doesn't have my bloodline, this is my son. He'll be my son no matter where he goes. Yin Yang did not destroy the 500 remnant souls right away. Instead, he gathered them together with Elder Qin's soul. Elder Qin's soul expanded visibly. In spite of this, Elder Qin was terrified. Other than the 300 remnant souls that he had placed on the surface, there were another 200 that were in hibernation as backup. Perhaps it was because they were too close or for some other reason. But Yin Yang had managed to plunder all of them. Not a single one was left out. All of them were gathered here. At this moment, he was on the brink of despair. It's about time. We should begin officially, Yin Yang said with a smile. Although there are other ways to find your other remnant souls, it would take too much time. Secondly, I intend to let the people of this world witness the so-called supernatural power. Let's seize this opportunity today. Now I'll show all of you a more interesting ability, ghost refining. Before he finished speaking, he pushed out with his palm. Old Man Qin's soul suddenly flew out and stopped in midair. Then, a ball of blue flame appeared under his body. Old Qin's soul began to wail miserably within the deep blue flame. It struggled and twisted unceasingly, taking on all kinds of forms. However, it was still unable to escape. I will not yield, Elder Qin cried out in agony. He howled miserably, as he was burned by the deep blue flames. He wanted to hold it in, and not let out a scream, but he couldn't hold it in at all. It was an excruciating pain that burned his soul. It was not something that could be easily endured. That kind of pain was thousands of times more intense than ordinary physical pain. The blue flame only burned for a moment before it stopped. However, Elder Qin's soul had been burned beyond recognition. It had shrunk visibly. He floated in the air, muttering to himself, I won't speak, I won't yield. That's great. Yin Yang smiled faintly and said, I like unyielding men. They give me the motivation to go on. Don't you ever give in. Then a ball of energy surged into Elder Qin's soul. Elder Qin was shocked to realize that his soul, which he thought was about to perish, had actually recovered. It had recovered to its peak state. He was full of vigor and energy in peak condition. However, the serene blue flame started burning again. Everyone in Tiantang City was watching the scene unfold, watching the strange soul being burned by Lord Supreme Cloud, as if it was happening right in front of their eyes. The wails seemed to come from his own soul. They watched blankly, watching the soul go from refusing to die to begging for mercy, then repeating the process of being burned and recovered again and again. It was a full 20 times. After 20 times, Elder Qin had recovered once more. But he had completely broken down. I'll confess. I'll confess everything. I'll find them now. Let me die. Let my soul be destroyed. Let my soul be destroyed. There's no hurry. Yin Yang's voice was warm. You're a man of steel. Why would you be in such a hurry to confess? You're just putting on an act, trying to deceive everyone. Let's take it slow. Why do I think you can at least pull through another 100 times? No. Elder Qin screamed in agony. Let me die. The torment of the soul had kept him in a completely conscious state. Unlike ordinary people, who could faint if they could not withstand it. However, Elder Qin did not even have the right to faint. He did not even have the right to lose his mind. He was conscious from the beginning to the end. In particular, he would recover to his peak state after each burn. allowing the burning process to be the longest and most complete. Elder Qin realized this clearly, causing him to feel even more hopeless. As long as Supreme Cloud was not willing, he would not die. This kind of torture would continue forever. Now he did not want anything else but to die. Even if he had to summon all of his clones and hand them over, he would not hesitate. However, this kind of torture was endless, and came one after another. He had already started to beg for mercy from the third burn. But Supreme Cloud was still unwilling to give in even after the 20th burn. Really, I've never seen such an interrogation. Tell me, Yin Yang said faintly. Tell me everything. What did you do? Or, do you want to continue being stubborn? Old Qin recovered once more, but his mentality, state, courage, and everything else were shattered. There was no longer any thought of resisting or lying. As long as he could die a quick death, he would do anything. Everything that had happened in the Empire of Yutong, during this period of time, was clearly revealed to the world through Old Qin's intermittent narration. The millions of people listening below were all dumbfounded. Yu Qingquan, who was on the stage, looked ashen. Although Elder Qin did not mention him, and even tried to avoid him, the emperor, those who were observant would have thought that without the emperor's permission, how could these decrees be passed on to the world? Chapter 1436. A moment later, the entire square, and the people of Tiantang City, were still immersed in a stupefied atmosphere. Their first thought was that they seemed to have fallen into a huge conspiracy, that they had been deceived, that they had been used from the beginning to the end. Furthermore, they had become a tool used by the bad guys to attack the person they were supposed to respect the most. Even though no one had spoken for a long time, and there wasn't the slightest sound, the entire place was silent, but everyone's rapid breathing had long since sold out their state of mind and emotions, and an extreme rage that was waiting to erupt could surge out at any moment. The white clouds in the sky surged once more as the giant formed from the endless clouds was slowly disappearing. Did this mean that Supreme Cloud was about to leave again? After another moment of silence, the millions of people below cried out with tears streaming down their cheeks. Lord Supreme Cloud! Don't go! Lord Supreme Cloud! Millions of people cried out in unison. Their voices were deafening, and could be heard hundreds of miles away. However, the giant in the sky was still disappearing, as if it did not hear the voices of the people. Seeing this scene, everyone felt a sudden emptiness in their hearts. They stared blankly at the disappearing giant. All of them could sense that something important was about to leave them forever. Many of them suddenly recalled that the spot right below where the cloud giant had materialized was where Supreme Cloud's stone statue had once stood. Back then, the 100-foot-tall giant had been smashed into pieces by them, hammer after hammer. Lord Supreme Cloud! We were wrong! We were wrong! Countless people cried, apologizing in sorrow and begging for the giant to stay, but it was useless. The giant was still disappearing. There was no longing, no intention to stay for even a moment longer. At this time, a shrill voice rang out. Ninth uncle! The giant in the sky finally stopped, pausing for a moment. The voice cried out again. Ninth uncle, don't go! I'm Bauer, don't go! However, the giant did not stop, finally disappearing without a trace. It did not stop because of the people. With a sudden bang, the cloud giant in the sky disappeared completely. The sky above Tiantang City was clear once more. There was nothing left. The sky was clear and the sun was shining brightly, but everyone was still dazed, unable to speak or move for a long time. On the tall building in the distance, Yu Qingquan's face was already covered in tears, and his majestic aura of a sovereign realm expert had dissipated. In the end, Uncle Joe still left some face for himself. He indicated to the people that he was held hostage by the monster soul, and that everything was out of his control. It was not his subjective will. However, Uncle Joe just left like that, without even saying a word to him. What did this mean? Was it that Uncle Joe was so disappointed with him that he had nothing to say? Before this, he had thought that it didn't matter. Uncle Joe wouldn't blame him. Even if he did, he wouldn't kill him, let alone depose him. Apart from that, nothing else mattered. His guess was right. Uncle Joe didn't do anything to him, and he even saved his face. But now that things had developed to this day, and everything had fallen into his control, why did he feel so empty? It was clearly a bright and sunny day, but why did it feel like the world was shrouded in haze? It was an extremely lonely atmosphere that suddenly surged into his heart, and was difficult to eliminate. Yu Qingquan stood there in a daze, looking at the sky where the giant had already disappeared. Suddenly tears surged out of his eyes. He choked again and muttered, "Ninth uncle." It was at this moment that he felt someone approaching him swiftly. The imperial guards around him were still immersed in the previous shock, completely unaware of the presence. Yu Qingquan turned to look, and saw that it was Shui Wuyin. He asked weakly, "What are you doing here?" Shui Wuyin said, "Lord Supreme Cloud asked me to bring you a message. Fang Mafei and Bai Yixue, whom you've detained, please release them, your majesty." Yu Qingquan's eyes glinted. "All right. Does ninth uncle have any other instructions?" Shui Wuyin looked at Yu Qingquan's hopeful gaze, and said with a shake of his head, "No." Yu Qingquan's gaze dimmed once more, looking even more dejected than before. "Where is ninth uncle now? Is he at the residence of King Yin?" Shui Wuyin said calmly, "The residence of King Yin is gone. It's been turned into ashes by Lord Supreme Cloud himself. There's only a piece of flat land left at the residence of King Yin now. There's not even the slightest bit of ruins left. All traces related to the Yin family name are gone." Yu Qingquan's body swayed, almost falling to the ground. The residence of King Yin had been turned into a piece of flat land, with no traces left? Shui Wuyin said, "It's not just the residence of King Yin. All traces of the 9 supremes in this world, those that once appeared on this continent, no longer exist. Even the temple of the 9 supremes at Tianxian Cliff no longer exists in this world. Tianxian Cliff has been erased from this world by Lord Supreme Cloud." Yu Qingquan took a deep breath and shut his eyes tightly. "This commoner shall take his leave. Where are you going?" "Lord Supreme Cloud has arranged a place for this commoner to stay for the rest of his life. This commoner shall retire from the martial world from now on," Shui Wuyin said quietly. "From now on, the 9 supremes no longer exist in this world. Naturally, the 9 heavens dictum will cease to exist as well. Everything shall be as your majesty wishes. From now on, you shall reign over the world without any more restraints. Your reign shall last for 100 generations." Shui Wuyin turned and left with large strides. Looking at Shui Wuyin's back, Yu Qingquan struggled to ask, "Those Yutong's old officials? Ninth uncle didn't say anything?" Shui Wuyin's footsteps did not stop as his indifferent voice drifted over. "No, Lord Supreme Cloud has nothing more to say." Shui Wuyin walked further and further away. His figure could no longer be seen, but Yu Qingquan was still standing there in a daze. Ninth uncle had left just like that. The 9 supremes, who had wiped out all traces with their own hands, had left. Before he left, he only asked for his 2 old subordinates. He didn't even leave me with a sentence like "take care of yourself." It's obvious how disappointed ninth uncle is in me. Yu Qingquan sighed softly, feeling the pain in his heart like a raging sea. "It's strange. I thought that since my parents passed away, there wouldn't be any sadness that could strike me. But today, I've achieved my wish. I'm no longer restrained in this world. I'm the only one in the world. But why do I feel even sadder, more lonely, and more lost than before? Ninth uncle, I only want to be a good emperor." Yin Yang was currently flying out of Tianting City with old Qin and the others in tow. Yun Xiaoyao, Shui Wuyin Laomei, as well as Bai Yixue and Fang Mafei, who had just been released. All of them were intact. With a wave of Yin Yang's sleeve, they were already thousands of miles away. In this lifetime, they would never return to Tianting City or Yutong. Yun Xiaoyao asked, "Here, you really don't plan to go back to take a look?" "Not going back." Yun Yang's expression was indifferent, but his tone was even more indifferent. "Can you really let it go? Is there nothing left for you to miss?" Yun Xiaoyao smiled. "Nothing. The child has grown up. He's no longer a helpless child. I've wiped away all traces related to the 9 supremes. The cause and effect no longer exist. His future path, good or bad, is all up to him. That's good too. What about you? Since Big Brother passed away, I have nothing left for Yutong. To me, a part of my life has passed just like that. Yun Xiaoyao's smile was indifferent. Then let's go to the Cloud Gate. All right, to the Cloud Gate. Beyond the border, under Yun Yang's manipulation that surpassed the limits of a human's ability, 3 mountains broke out from the ground and rose rapidly until they reached the clouds. Looking at the clouds halfway up the mountain, a palace stood out of thin air. It was the Cloud Gate that Yun Yang had mentioned. Inside the Cloud Gate, flowers bloomed everywhere, with countless pavilions and towers hidden in the clouds. There were also many elegant courtyards hidden under the shade of the trees. Shui Wuyin Lao Mei Fong Mafei by Yixue, and the rest were all here. Qiu Jianhan Fong Qingtian, the Shangguan family of generals, Taizheng, Fu Baogua, and the rest were here as well. When they were free, they would go out for a walk and come back to rest when they were tired. The important matters of the imperial court seemed to have nothing to do with these people anymore. The elderly who had worked hard for the country and the people for their entire lives came here to enjoy their remaining years. They could finally put everything down and start taking care of themselves, to live a few more years, to cultivate, to have fun, to live happily. Shui Wuyin's 9 heavens dictum had also settled down here, but they did not really stop. Their military force and intelligence network were still developing in secret. It was like an invisible network that slowly spread its tentacles to every corner of the world. Yun Yang had purposely set an iron rule. The descendants of the Cloud Gate could roam the world anonymously and do something for the world if they wanted to be high officials and nobles, not letting down what they had learned in their lifetime. However, they were not to be too attached to power and position. When an official reached a certain level, they had to retreat, and they were not allowed to use the Cloud Gate's power to interfere with the change of the dynasty in this world. The residences of a few old officials of the imperial court were arranged in a huge courtyard that was the size of a city. The entrance of the courtyard was decorated with a common couplet. It's better to retreat when you've received a favor. It's better to stop when you're satisfied. One should never wait until one's achievements shocked the master. Even if they had the ability to protect themselves and could retreat unscathed, it was inevitable that they would be heartbroken. As for Taizheng, Fu Baogua, and the others, their ambitions had not died yet. The Cloud Gate could protect their lives, but they had refused to stay within the Cloud Gate and stayed at the outermost area instead. It was obvious that these few invincible marshals still had other thoughts in their minds. The gust of depression had yet to dissipate. Yun Yang did not say anything about this. He did not approve of it, nor did he stop it. He could do whatever he wanted. If by any chance, the Cloud Gate would protect him and his family. The few of you have the potential to ascend. If you ascend to the bound of universe, head to the Palace of 9 Supremes as soon as possible. That is our home in the bound of universe. Yun Yang told by Yixue, Fong Mafei, and the others. However, the Cloud Gate must be protected before you ascend. All right. As for Qiu Jianhan and the others, they were already old. Although Yun Yang had the means to turn things around and make them immortal, these elders had gone through the change of Yutong's imperial court and had tasted the fickleness of the world, tasting the joys and sorrows of life. They no longer had any attachment to this life. They could not even wait to start a new life. The so-called immortality was merely torture to them. Yun Yang could do nothing about it. He could only strengthen their souls to ensure that when they reached the end of their lifespan and reincarnated, their true spirits would remain intact. Of course, Yun Yang had some regrets about this. After all, they would no longer be close friends after reincarnation. However, Qiu Jianhan and the others were looking forward to it. It was obvious that they had seen through the world and did not want to be tied down by the past anymore. Time passed by slowly. A few months had passed almost in the blink of an eye. On this day, Yun Yang felt something and left the Cloud Gate with Shangguan Lingxiu and Yun Xiaoyao, heading towards Tiantang City. Father, both of us are going to see the old emperor for the last time before we return. All right. Yun Xiaoyao felt that this period of time was the happiest and most comforting of his life. His son was filial and his daughter-in-law was virtuous. He probably had no regrets in this life, and nothing more to ask for. Father, who was the one who saved you back then? Yun Yang finally asked this question. Yun Xiaoyao had never spoken of this matter. He did not even mention a word or two. Yin Yang was very curious about this. Now that they were about to part, he finally asked. Yun Xiaoyao laughed and said leisurely, "With your profound cultivation base, do you still need to consult your father? The person who saved your father was a very, very good person, a very, very good person. That day, it was as easy as lifting a hand to save your father." It was laughable that the founder of the school of Kismet State thought that he could completely kill your father. How could he know the vastness of the universe with his meager cultivation base? How could the Almighty's ability be fathomed? That fellow was very jealous of me. This is something that will make me laugh for the rest of my life. Ha ha ha. Yin Yang was bewildered. With Yin Yang's profound wisdom, he had already connected the dots with just a few words. Some expert had saved Yun Xiaoyao right under old Qin's nose. Furthermore, it seemed that in Yun Xiaoyao's eyes, this savior was an almighty being, one who was even more powerful than himself. However, how could there be such an almighty being in this world? He had guessed that it was Jun Moyan, but Jun Moyan did not seem to be old Qin's opponent. He definitely did not have such a skill. Furthermore, why would such an almighty being be jealous of Yun Xiaoyao? Why? Haven't you figured it out yet? Where's Supreme Wit's wisdom? Sai, you're not a father yet. It's reasonable for you to be blinded by a leaf. Let's put it this way. If I'm not mistaken, that person should be your biological father. Yin Xiaoyao said with a smile. Back then, I was already suffering from the poison. I was told that I would be fine even if my life hung in the balance. But he healed me with just a lift of his hand and removed the poison. He even changed me with God's blood and a set of saints' bones. He only had one request for me, a very strange one. What request? How strange. He wanted me to find a wife quickly and have a son as soon as possible. He wanted me to not fight for my son with him anymore. Yin Xiaoyao laughed. Yin Yang could not help but laugh as well. What did you say? Yin Xiaoyao chuckled. Although my ability is not as good as his, how could I give in on this? I told him directly that he was a man with a wife. It would be much easier for him to have another child than for me. This son of yours is destined to bear the surname of Yin for the rest of his life. Ha ha ha, that old thing actually threatened me. How could I, Yin Xiaoyao, be someone who can be threatened? The moment he opened his mouth to make a request, he had already exposed his guilt. Humph. Yin Yang and Shengguan Lingxiu burst into laughter. However, I'll be practicing Go wholeheartedly for a long time after this. That old thing told me that my son's heart is incomparable to his, but he's still my savior after all. So, he decided to use the game of Go as a wager. The ownership of my son will be the stake of the wager. How can this old man be a coward? I've agreed to it right away. A mere game of Go is not worth mentioning. This old man has decided to devote himself to this art, and will never lose to him. He gave me 100 years. 100 years? Can I not even play a mere game of Go? Yin Xiaoyao was brimming with confidence. Yin Yang chuckled bitterly. He thought to himself, why don't you just agree to play Go with him? Yin Xiaoyao said, but who can tell what will happen in the future? Still, I'm not worried. You have such a powerful father as your backing. And you're so outstanding. This old man will have no more worries in this life, especially without regrets. In front of the mausoleum of Yutong's emperor, Emperor Yupeiza, father and son stood solemnly to offer incense. Royal brother, half of your wish has been fulfilled. To you, perhaps you still have regrets, but to the world, this emperor, even if he's not considered good, he's not bad either. He's a qualified successor. Yin Xiaoyao sighed softly. He could not help recalling the conversations his brother, the emperor, had in his residence a few times during his last moments. Bao-er is the only successor and the most qualified successor. His Majesty's voice had been filled with melancholy then. Let him be. It was also what His Majesty had said then. Had this emperor, who had commanded for his entire life, sensed something long ago? His last move was to plan for the future. But was it not to protect the lives of his old brothers as well? However, there was no way to verify all of this. It had all gone with the wind. Your Majesty, is the prosperous world today as you wish, as you're happy to see it? Yin Yang asked softly, and lit up an incense stick. Through his deific consciousness, Yu Qingquan already knew that someone was paying respects here, and had guessed something. He was hurrying out of the palace and heading over. Yin Yang sighed softly. Let's go. Yun Xiaoyao squinted at him. Still not meeting? It's better not to meet. Let's not meet. You're rather ruthless. Am I? If you're really unfortunate when you're old, then you'll know how ruthless Yin Yang can be. Besides, as long as I don't see him, he'll be filled with guilt. With guilt, he'll feel more pressured, and he'll be able to treat the world better. If I see him, he might feel relieved instead. So it's better not to see him. Yin Yang chuckled. I've never been made to be an emperor, nor do I understand the mind of an emperor. Naturally, I can't think of what an emperor should be like. It's hard for me to understand, and I don't agree with what he's doing. So, I've chosen to let go. What a good let go. Ha 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 ha. Yin Xiaoyao chortled. This old man is leaving. With a flash, he vanished without a trace. He did not even bid farewell to Yin Yang. Yin Yang and Shangguan Lingxiu smiled at each other and stood up. With a ripple of space, they were already tens of thousands of miles away, on a huge mountain. Yu Qingquan galloped over like his life depended on it. Ninth uncle, wait for me. He urged the horse anxiously, galloping as fast as lightning. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I just want to hear you call me Bao. Again. However, when he arrived at the imperial mausoleum, it was quiet, and there was no one around. There were only 3 incense sticks burning quietly in front of the mausoleum. There was nothing else. Chapter 1437. This is the headquarters of the School of Kismet State? Shangguan Lingxiu asked in slight surprise as she stared at the place that could not even be considered a ruin. I wasn't the one who ended the School of Kismet State's annihilation that day, but it was Duga Chou and Ling Xiaozui. I thought that with their experience and knowledge, there wouldn't be any hidden dangers. I was thinking about the final battle with the Four Seasons Tower then. So I didn't come back. I didn't expect that the School of Kismet State would still be in trouble. Speaking of which, I should be thankful for Ling Xiaozui and Duga Chou. If the founding patriarch Old Qin had come out of seclusion earlier, they wouldn't have been able to gain any advantage over the two of them. Instead, they would have been in danger of being wiped out. Yin Yang said softly, then what's the reason for revisiting this place? Old Qin has fallen into your hands. Annihilating him is as easy as lifting a finger. He's the founding patriarch of the School of Kismet State. There shouldn't be anyone above him, right? Shangguan Lingxiu asked. There's no harm in being careful. I still feel that something is not right. Yun Yang said. A world fragment like the Tianxian continent can only sustain a limited amount of individual power. A 10,000-year-old immortal spirit like Elder Qin really shouldn't exist in this world. Now that it has appeared, it's against the norm. There must be some unique opportunity, and the place that's tied to it the most is the starting place where it has cultivated for countless years. Yin Yang smiled. I'm really curious. What is this difference? As he spoke, Yin Yang summoned Old Qin. Old Qin was in perfect condition now, but the moment he saw Yin Yang, he could not help the intense fear and dread that colored his face. To Old Qin, Supreme Cloud was the most terrifying demon. His insanity was infuriating. He understood and felt that this person was by no means a benevolent person. It was not by chance that he had annihilated an army of hundreds of thousands with a wave of his hand, nor was it a last resort. Among all the famed generals in the continent, there was no one who could kill more than Supreme Cloud who stood before him. Others could kill tens of thousands of people in a war. It could be said that a general's success was built on the bones of tens of thousands, a living god of death. However, a single Supreme Cloud battle would cost at least 100,000 lives. After so many years, how could it be just 10 million lives? Corpses piled up like mountains and blood flowed like oceans. Open your most secret place and let me see. Yin Yang ordered faintly. Old Man Qin didn't say anything, and immediately started to move. To him, Yin Yang's words were more sacred than an imperial edict. With Yin Yang's command, it was as if he had received the imperial edict and ran faster than a dog. And all he wanted was a quick death. When he was being watched by Emmy, he was even more fearful than before. However, he was determined and had tried to self-destruct again and again, hoping to end this quickly. It was a pity that his attempts were futile even after 7 to 8 times. It wasn't that his self-detonation didn't fail. In fact, it succeeded every time. However, after self-detonation, he should have been reduced to ashes. When he regained his consciousness, he was shocked to find that he was still in the same place. Still alive. Even if he successfully self-destructed, he wouldn't die. Even if his soul was destroyed, he could still come back to life. No matter how determined old Qin was, he could only submit to Yin Yang wholeheartedly and pray that he would be eliminated. That would be the end. As a gust of yin qi rose, the gravel at the top of the mountain flowed away like quicksand and disappeared. Somewhere deep in the school of Kismet State's old site, a huge tunnel appeared. Just as Yun Yang and the others entered the tunnel, the surface of the tunnel returned to its original state. From the outside world, it looked like the tunnel had never existed in this world. Yun Yang and Shangguan Lingxiu were naturally unafraid of any danger in this world. They went down the tunnel, traveling thousands of feet in one go. Suddenly, there was something that looked like an underground square. Yun Yang squinted his eyes. To him, no matter how mysterious an underground square was, no matter how extravagant it was nothing. However, the altar in front of him caused his expression to change. Those were God's bones. In the center of the altar, there were 108 bones. They were all femur bones, each corresponding to a position. The 108 bones formed a perfect circle. On top of the circle, there was a huge cauldron. It was also densely packed with God's bones. At this moment, Yin Yang was struck with a sudden realization. The real reason why the school of Kismet State's founding grandmaster could exist for so long was because of God's bones. The school of Kismet State had collected so many God's bones in the eons since its founding. The scale was much more than what the Four Seasons Tower had collected back then. At least a dozen times more. Compared to the Four Seasons Tower's method of assimilating the God's bones directly into the body to increase the user's combat power, and nourish the God's bones in reverse for future use, the school of Kismet State had taken a different path. They had thrown all the God's bones they had obtained into this altar, absorbing the power of the God's bones bit by bit in a subtle way to nourish the souls in the altar. With a sweep of his divine sense, Yin Yang understood everything. The total number of God's bones in this altar, big and small, was more than 500 pieces. It could almost be said that finding these God's bones was equivalent to recalling all the bones that had been lost in the land of God's bones. It's great to have such a harvest. But where did the school of Kismet State collect so many God's bones from? Although the school of Kismet State was formidable and stood above all the sects in the secular world, it was still lacking compared to the Four Seasons Tower. The Four Seasons Tower had only obtained so little. How could the school of Kismet State have so many? It doesn't make sense. Yin Yang did not spend too much time pondering on this question. With old Qin beside him, he could just ask directly. There was no need to think too much. Old Qin answered. Back when I hadn't established the school of Kismet State, I'd built a hut here and lived. I focused on cultivating my martial arts, intending to achieve what no one had done before me, to turn my body into a saint and ascend to heaven. I really can't remember which day it was. I don't know what happened to the space above my head either, but a lot of things fell down noisily. I was cultivating at the top of the mountain then. Due to the sudden turn of events, I was buried by the things that fell from the sky. My internal breath was disturbed, and I was about to go berserk. Then, the spiritual qi in these things flowed like a tide, guiding my internal breath that had gone astray back to the right path. The berserk was cured without medicine. Seeing how magical these things were, of course, I had to keep them all. The things that fell back then weren't just God's bones. There were many other things as well. There were common items among the people, and there were also things that the martial artists of this world couldn't use. Some weapons, for example. Yin Yang's gaze moved and noticed a few weapons displayed on a wall. They looked simple and unadorned, but they contained immense power. Upon closer inspection, however, he realized that the weapons felt out of place in this space. These weapons seem to have owners, and are full of spirituality. I've tried many times and confirmed that the owners of these weapons aren't completely dead yet, so others can't use them at all. If they forcefully use them, they'll be devoured instead. Old Chin was speechless. He had been knocked out by the mountain of gold that had fallen from the sky. He had confirmed again and again that he had indeed obtained the mountain of gold, and it was even more precious than the mountain of gold. However, the most valuable part of this mountain of gold, he could not even touch it. He could only stare at it. One could only imagine the frustration he felt. I'm not fated to be a weapon, but those bones are of great help to me. With the help of the spiritual energy that's slowly flowing out of those bones, my cultivation has improved by leaps and bounds. After a few decades of cultivation, I've broken through to the supreme level. However, after I've broken through to the supreme level, I can't help but want to obtain a weapon to increase my strength. My goal is that sword. Yun Yang and Shangguan Lingxiu turned to look, and saw a sword leaning against the wall. It was simple and unadorned, yet it exuded an indescribable elegance. Even though it had been sealed for thousands of years, the blade was still spotless. It was obvious that it was a peerless divine weapon that was extraordinary. I, who boasted of my great improvement, tried to infiltrate it with my spiritual consciousness, hoping to destroy the original owner's spiritual imprint. Unexpectedly, I was killed by the sword's soul. Although I survived by luck, I sacrificed my long lifespan and was only left with a few decades to live. How could I, who had long aspired to become a saint and transcend this world, be willing to die just like that? Using what I've learned in this lifetime, I built this altar to store my soul and nurture it. This altar can even accept the power of providence as a sacrifice. After that, I spent another 20 years to build the school of Kismet state, to ensure that the flame would be passed down, and that my altar would be endlessly nourished. Old Chin was speechless. I had planned to have an endless flow of providence. One day, I'd be able to achieve the embodiment of providence. Then, I'd fuse all of these gods' bones into myself, but the outcome was obvious. Yutong's unification of Tianxian continent was different from the school of Kismet state's designated goal. The providence backfired, and the headquarters of the school of Kismet state was destroyed by Ling Xiaozui and Duge Chou. Space shattered. Yin Yang frowned. He did not expect such a change to occur when God's bones were left behind. No wonder this place was not discovered by the Four Seasons Tower. This fellow was not the leader of a sect before he obtained God's bones. His cultivation base was barely passable at that time. He knew that obtaining God's bones by chance was the true leap in his cultivation base. But he had been devoured by the soul of the sword when his mystical art had just been accomplished. No one would have thought that the school of Kismet state, the one who claimed to be the one who would decide the change of the imperial city in this world, was actually a tool for this fellow's personal gain. It was obvious that he had not told anyone about this secret. So the people from the school of Kismet state, who came later, had no idea that there were so many treasures buried under their buttocks. It had to be said that the entire incident was absurd and ludicrous. Yin Yang's thoughts spun as he gradually released his deific consciousness that he had been suppressing. He searched the space above carefully, repeatedly, like quicksilver spilling on the ground, to see if there was a spatial node like the god's grave somewhere in this world. If what Old Chin said was true, that God's bones had descended from heaven, then there must be a similar spatial node in this space. After searching for a long time, Yun Yang only found a tiny trace that seemed to have collapsed in this space. It was not obvious, but it was also inconspicuous. If it were not for Old Chin's words, Yun Yang would not have dared to confirm that it was a sign of the space collapsing. But this bit of evidence was enough. At least it was enough for Yun Yang now. Yun Yang did not hesitate as he kept all the God's bones, and all the weapons that were left here into the spatial ring that stored God's bones. Anything else? Yun Yang stared at Old Chin. He had his own reasons for asking this question, but he still had to ask to see if this fellow was really being honest. At the bottom of the altar there are 10 skulls. Old Chin was really honest. He didn't try to play any tricks, as he said everything without any hesitation. He was well aware that with the cultivation level of this person before him, not to mention hiding under the altar, even if he hid in the deepest part of the entire continent, he would still be able to find him with just a thought. The reason why he asked him this question was purely because he was treating him as a joke. Or perhaps, he was playing a prank, and wanted to use this as an excuse to punish him again. Yin-yang chuckled, and took out the god's bones that were hidden under the altar. Old Qin said knowingly, "There's nothing left this time. There's nothing left." Yin-yang hummed in acknowledgement. With a wave of his sleeve, the entire underground space was reduced to dust with a loud bang. Everything was no longer in this world. At the same time, Yin-yang and the rest had already left the place, and went to the foot of the mountain where the school of Kismet State used to be. "If there's nothing else, we'll be going back." Yin-yang looked at Shangguan Lingxiu and asked, "Is there anything you can't let go of?" Shangguan Lingxiu bit her lip and sighed, saying, "I still want to visit grandmother and my nephews, but I think I won't go. I want to see her and she wants to see me too. But the pain of parting every time takes a toll on her body. She's already so old, it's better not to see each other. That's why I want to go, but I'm afraid to." Shangguan Lingxiu was conflicted. "Then don't go for now," Yin-yang said. "When your cultivation base breaks through to the level of saint and condenses your qi, you can leave a clone here to keep the elderly company. Isn't that better than anything else?" Shangguan Lingxiu's eyes shone. "Not bad, not bad. This is a great idea. Then let us go." Shangguan Lingxiu laughed and said, "All right." Just as they were about to move, Yin-yang suddenly frowned and stared at the path in front of him. "Two old friends have come. I wonder if it's a coincidence or not." "Old friends? Who?" Yin-yang smiled but did not answer. At the foot of the mountain, Wei Xinglu and Gugu, both senior and junior siblings, who had not seen each other for a long time, were walking at a steady pace towards them. As they walked, Wei Xinglu was still talking. "Gugu, people like Supreme Cloud are not people you can meet just because you want to. If you don't see him this time, it's probably fate. You don't have to be discouraged." Gugu's calm voice said, "I've never been discouraged. I just want to verify the prophecy that Heaven's Inquisitor gave me that day. If I really see him, I'll only ask him if he still remembers me. If I don't see him, everything will go with the wind." Wei Xinglu sighed and said, "You're the leader of our sect now. To suddenly leave the mountain gate, just because of a prophecy in the past. I don't have the confidence." Gugu rolled her eyes and said, "It's just a long trip. What's the big deal?" Both of them were talking as they flew over. The two big trees that had just passed by suddenly stopped in their tracks. Both of them looked over in disbelief with their eyes wide open. Under the tree, Yin-yang was dressed in a purple robe, looking at both of them with kind eyes. He was still as handsome and elegant as he was back then. It was such a familiar yet long-lost feeling. Both of them were stunned, rooted to the ground. Supreme Cloud. Old friends reunited today. Both of them were overjoyed. After the initial shock, Wei Xinglu and Gugu quickly regained their composure and began to talk and laugh naturally. "I can't believe that the little girl from back then has actually become the leader of a sect today. Congratulations," Yin-yang teased. Gugu was furious. "Why can't I become the leader of a sect? What has the little girl done to you? I'm just saying. Why are you like a cat with its fur standing on end? You're still the same as before, the shrewdness and magnanimity that a leader should have." Yin-yang was speechless. "You can't just say it like that. It's fake to be my sect's leader. You're profaning our sect, do you know that?" Gugu was as fierce as ever. All right, I've misspoken. Sect leader is magnanimous, please don't blame me." Yin-yang raised his hands in surrender. "Then, let's drink and reminisce about the old days. Can I punish myself by drinking 3 cups to compensate for my crime? Reminisce about the old days by drinking? Are you trying to force a girl to drink?" Gugu said fiercely, but she laughed and said, "Drink less then, just for the sake of it." Haha. Everyone burst into laughter. "Right, I still don't know what's your name, sect leader? Don't tell me you're called Gugu? Even if you know my name in your heart, I'm still Gugu." Gugu said, "Why do you want to know?" Haha. "That's true. It's you and I who are friends, not who we are. Names are indeed not important." The 4 of them sat facing each other. Yin-yang took out a few dishes from his space and drank with them. In such a beautiful place, it was a different kind of flavor for friends to drink and reminisce about the old days. The few of them talked about their respective encounters after they had parted. Yin Yang played the role of a loyal listener. Gugu drank in big mouthfuls. She was in high spirits, acting bolder than a man. It was a pity that she could not hold her liquor. Not long after, her eyes became blurry. She looked at Yin Yang for a while. Her lips moved as if she wanted to say something. However, after looking at Shangguan Lingxiu, she did not say anything in the end. Not long after, Gugu was completely drunk. She fell into Wei Xinglu's arms unconscious. Wei Xinglu smiled bitterly. Junior sister is drunk. If Lord Supreme Cloud has no other instructions, we shall take our leave now. Yin Yang kept quiet for a while and said, I don't know when we'll meet again after this farewell. Before we leave, I have a gift for you. I hope that my brother will not reject it. Wei Xinglu was very understanding and said in a low voice, All right, I'll pass it to Gugu. He understood very well that this was not a gift for him. This was the compensation that Yin Yang had made for a certain deception back then. However, Wei Xinglu still chose to accept it on behalf of Gugu. Yin Yang took a look at Wei Xinglu and cupped his hands together. Brother Wei, take care. I hope that one day, we can meet again in the bound of universe. We were friends back then, and today, we are still as warm as before. Take care, we shall meet again. Wei Xinglu glanced at the junior sister in his arms and sighed in his heart, saying, Take care. I hope that we shall meet again. Yin Yang smiled. With a wave of his hand, a space crack suddenly appeared. He held Shangguan Lingxiu's hand and stepped into it, disappearing immediately. Gugu, who was in Wei Xinglu's arms, opened her eyes abruptly. 2 lines of tears rolled down. Didn't you say you wanted to ask him? Why didn't you? Why should I ask? Wei Xinglu sighed. Gugu said coldly. Back then, his original intention was just to use us, wasn't it? Wei Xinglu let out another long sigh. When 2 countries were at war, life and death, what was there to say at that time? He passed the space ring over. This is the gift he left for you. You shouldn't have accepted it. Gugu's eyes were red. Wei Xinglu naturally knew that he should not have accepted it. But, he still accepted it. Gugu opened the space ring, and saw that there were 4 bottles of medicinal pills inside. Each bottle of medicinal pills had a detailed method of consumption, effects, taboos, and so on written on it. The 4 bottles of medicinal pills had different effects. One bottle's effect was to enhance one's cultivation base. Consuming 1 pill could enhance one's cultivation base by 50 years. There were as many as 100 pills in one bottle. The effect of this bottle was to enhance one's soul. And there were also 100 pills. The remaining 2 bottles only had 1 pill each. The former could increase one's lifespan by 1,000 years, while the latter could preserve one's youthful appearance and preserve one's youth forever. Other than that, there was also a delicate short sword that could cut through iron like mud. The shape of this sword was exactly the same as the short sword in Gugu's sleeve. Gugu stared at the newly acquired short sword for a moment, and tears rolled down her cheeks again. She pulled out her own short sword with gritted teeth, and used all her strength to slash at the short sword. With a choked voice she roared, "Break!" With a crack, the short sword in Gugu's hand, the sex treasure, broke into 2 halves. The short sword that Yin Yang had gifted her was still in her hand unscathed. There was not even a scratch on it. Such a godly weapon could not be damaged by the cultivators of this world. In the profound sky continent, this was a sword that had never been seen since ancient times. Gugu's tears streamed down her face as she said miserably, "Eldest senior brother, you really shouldn't have accepted it. You accepted this unbreakable short sword, and let me look at it all the time. How could I forget it?" Both of them were stunned for a long time. "Let's go back. Let's go back." After walking for a long distance, when they were about to turn around the foot of the mountain, Gugu finally stopped and turned back to look at the 2 big trees. Under the trees there was a small platform. It seemed that they were still sitting, still drinking, still laughing and chatting. She suddenly let out a long howl towards the sky, and kept the sword in her hand into her sleeve. Turning around, she dashed away without looking back. "Yin Yang, I will hate you for the rest of my life," Feng Lingtian said. "I've been contacting various schools recently, wanting to choose a suitable one to experience life in. The next book will temporarily have a school part in the setting. It's a pity that I've never been to a university. What if you guys scold me when I write it? What are you writing, Feng Lingtian? This isn't a university. This is a kindergarten. Wouldn't I be embarrassed then? Chapter 1438. When Old Qin and the other ghosts left Tianxian, Yunyang asked Old Qin, intentionally or unintentionally, "Do you want to live or die?" Want to live or die? When this question was asked, an ordinary person's first reaction would be to say that he wanted to live. But Old Qin misunderstood Yin Yang's meaning. I only want to die, to be free from this world. All right. Yin Yang did not say much and crushed it without hesitation. If Old Qin said that he wanted to live, Yin Yang would bring them to the bound of universe. In the bound of universe, Old Qin's ability might not be able to do anything. The residents of Nine Supremes had always been inclusive and did not discriminate against ghostly cultivators. Old Qin and the other spirits were unique existences after all. It was not necessary for Yin Yang to annihilate them with their bizarre assistance. However, Old Qin had obviously misunderstood. He thought that Yin Yang's so-called survival was to bear the burning of the mystical flame all the time. So naturally, he was willing to die. He did not know that the burning of the soul by the mystical flame was nothing to Yin Yang, but what repaired his soul was the spiritual energy of vitality. This was also because Yin Yang had Emiya cheat. Others like Dongfang Haoren would only use the spiritual energy of vitality in other places, even if they had such a treasure. They would not be as wasteful as Yin Yang. Yin Yang's usage was seen by those with a discerning eye. Aside from the pain, it was normal for them to attack Yin Yang. However, Yin Yang was not in the mood to explain further. He crushed it without a second thought. It was just a fleeting thought. It's fine if you come, it's fine if you don't. It's New Year's Eve anyway. I'll celebrate the new year with you, or without you. It's still a pity. Shangguan Lingxiu watched Yin Yang dispose of the few phantoms, and said with slight regret, "Such a complete state. A soul that has been cultivating for tens of thousands of years is one of a kind, even in the bound of universe. His foundation is no less than that of the demon soul." My original intention in asking this question was indeed because of this soul energy. However, they lost this opportunity on their own, so it has nothing to do with anyone else. I've never said that I'm not angry at the things they did in the profound sky continent. Yin Yang said calmly. Since I've lost the opportunity, I might as well use it to vent my anger and end the karma in another way. Shangguan Lingxiu could not help but chuckle. This old fellow doesn't want to die either. He's just afraid of being tormented by you. How would he know that there's a chance of survival now? Forget it. What's done is done. His death is not to be regretted. On his way back, Yin Yang did not deliberately hasten his pace, but he could vaguely feel that the barrier of the Saint Realm in front of him was growing thinner and thinner, almost as if it had disappeared. It was a feeling that even if he didn't work hard to break through, he could still break through on his own. It was a subtle feeling that was real. Yin Yang enjoyed the feeling very much, so he wasn't in a hurry to break through instead, and he instead devoted himself to comprehending his current cultivation realm. During this process of breaking through, he completely understood every single detail of the process, causing his mental state to undergo a transformation, as if he'd been reborn. So this is the truth behind the path of the Saint Realm. The moment he stepped foot on the bound of universe once more, Yin Yang felt as if he had been reborn. It was as if he was bathing in an extremely mystical and relaxed atmosphere. A refreshing feeling surged up from his chest, and he could not help wanting to howl into the sky and let loose a long howl. The howl was so loud that the wind and clouds shifted, and the heaven and earth moved. Yin Yang's aura swept across 30,000 miles in an instant. All the living beings in the bound of universe felt their hearts skip a beat, feeling a sense of peace and serenity in them. Is this another saint has achieved greatness? Countless humans rejoiced. Another saint had been born, and the bound of universe had another pillar that could hold up the heavens. It was much more stable now. In the depths of the East Celestial Palace, Dongfang Haoren, who was in closed-door cultivation, opened his eyes abruptly. Stars seemed to be swirling in his eyes, glowing brightly as he said, "Good lad. You've broken through so quickly." He stopped his closed-door cultivation and asked through voice transmission, How's the Supreme Heaven Pavilion now? Someone replied immediately. The Supreme Heaven Pavilion has begun to send out the light of selection. What's the situation with the demon race now? How's the civil war? Is there a limit to the war's expansion? The demon race's civil war is still in a stalemate. The fox sovereign and the cat sovereign don't seem to have the intention to expand the war, and are mostly defending themselves. The demon sovereign doesn't seem to have the intention to quell the rebellion in one fell swoop. So both sides are still in the stalemate. The fox sovereign's and the cat sovereign's forces are still limited to the fox clan's original territory. Although the other clans are mobilizing their troops, their destination is unclear. Perhaps they're going to quell the rebellion, but it's more likely that they're going to the Blood Soul Mouth. After all, the main force of the Blood Soul Mouth's gatekeepers are mostly from the Fox clan. Now that the Fox clan is in a state of full preparation for war, the Blood Soul Mouth will naturally have many openings. Add another 5 demigods to the Blood Soul Mouth. Be wary of the demon race, taking advantage of the situation. Don't be careless. Yes, Palace Lord. Will these people be sent by the East Celestial Palace? What time is there to care about which Celestial Palace? Go. Yes. In the next moment, Dongfang Haoren's figure turned incorporeal, as he disappeared from the palace where he was cultivating in seclusion. In the blink of an eye, he had already appeared in the West Heaven Holy Palace, in Shiman Fafu's seclusion chamber. The moment he appeared, he heard Shiman Fafu instructing the West Heaven Holy Palace's experts to reinforce the Blood Soul Mountain. Seeing Dongfang Haoren's arrival, he could not help but laugh. You old man, you also felt it? Of course I felt the birth of a saint. It would be strange if I didn't feel it. Dongfang Haoren said. Now it's about time. How is it about time? There are still 2 more than half of it. Shiman Fafu said. The original words left by our ancestor were, when 3 saints appear, the world will be at peace. Now only Yun Yang alone has become a saint. I think it's still too early. I can tell you responsibly that the day of ancestors' prophecy is coming soon, Dongfang Haoren said. I've come to discuss the matter of all the experts of the 3 heavenly palaces coming out of the Blood Soul Mouth. Shiman Fafu frowned and said, I don't dare to be as optimistic as you, forget it. Let's go to Northern Heaven to talk. This matter can't be left out of Old Man Beigong. The 2 rulers stood up at the same time, and disappeared from the West Heaven Holy Palace, in a flash of starlight. On the road, Dongfang Haoren deliberately slowed down his footsteps. How is it? He was a saint of a generation, the face of a ruler. But at this moment, there was actually a hint of winking between his brows. His original sage-like and otherworldly image disappeared without a trace. Shiman Fafu's old face was dyed red. Cough, I'm pregnant, cough, cough, cough. Dongfang Haoren laughed. Didn't I want to kill you? Why did it suddenly happen? Speaking of this, Shiman Fanfu suddenly became elated and said proudly, I finally understand now. No matter how unreasonable these women are, as long as we, the head of the family, are strong, there is nothing we can't subdue. This old man only needs to slap them twice, and then give them a round of punches and kicks, and they will be subdued in no time. Dongfang Haoren laughed. If you say this to other people they might believe it, but if you say it to me, ha 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 ha, even if I go to the next life, this old man won't believe it. Shiman Fafu's face turned red as he argued. This is the truth. Then he quickly changed the topic. What about you? Me. Dongfang Haoren snorted twice. I'm pregnant with 2. Fuck. Shiman Fafu was a bit unhappy. Why do you only have 2? Dongfang Haoren glanced at him. I have 7 wives, how many do you have? Shiman Fafu instantly lost his temper. Aren't mine? Dongfang Haoren said. A coward is a coward. What use is there in saying that? Shiman Fafu flew into a rage. What did you say? I said you're a coward, so what? Isn't that the truth? Shiman Fafu's chest was filled with anger, but he couldn't do anything. He just continued on his way, not saying another word. Tell me, I'm very interested. Tell me my ass. Shiman Fafu said. Father used the immortal execution sacred water, that's why. Ahahaha. Dongfang Haoren held his stomach, laughing so hard he couldn't breathe. You're really awesome, old man Shiman. Father must be convinced by you today. I can't not be convinced. I can't not be convinced. Shemin Fafa's face was filled with black lines, but there was a trace of pride mixed in. It took an entire 2.5 months. Until there was a reaction. This old man undid the restriction. Humph. Women will always be women. Once they have a child, they've already thrown us men to the side. Not fighting anymore. Not fighting anymore. That wife of mine isn't an unreasonable person. It's just that the pain of losing her son has damaged her soul. Now that she has someone to rely on, she naturally regained her rationality. Ha, 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 ha. The two of them arrived at the northern desolate demonic palace with proud expressions. They heard Baigong Liuli's loud laughter. Not bad, not bad. The two of them asked together, what's not bad? Baigong Liuli laughed so hard his beard trembled. Today this old man has one more. What? Out of this old man's wives and concubines, there have already been 7 people who have good news. Today there's one more. Of course it's not bad. Hearing this, Dongfang Haoran and Shemin Fafu felt their pride suffer a heavy blow. They said with dark expressions, You didn't waste a single bit. Even if it wasn't wasted, this old man only has 3 left. Baigong Liuli had a face full of joy, but there was a tinge of regret. It's a pity this old man has too many wives. These 8 are pregnant, and the other 20 are all red-eyed, wanting a share. But this old man only has 3 strands of life energy left. There aren't enough to go around. How could there be enough? You two came at the right time. Quickly give the ones that haven't been used to this old man, so this old man can make the best use of them. Dongfang Haoran and Shemin Fafa both had serious expressions. No, there isn't even one left. No way. Baigong Liuli's eyes widened. Why did you use them so quickly? Dongfang Haoran said with a dark expression. If you don't have any left, you should go to Yin Yang. Why are you looking for us? We're here for serious business today. Who has the time to play with you? Let's get down to business. I don't want to talk to this old stud anymore. It's too much of a blow. Baigong Liuli said casually. It's about time indeed. I know. How can I not know when the Supreme Heaven Pavilion glows? The 3 of them entered Baigong Liuli's study. Let's discuss this. The border of the bound of universe. You've broken through? Shangguan Lingxiu was overjoyed. Yes, I have. Yin Yang smiled and said, Sister Lingxiu, please go to the Palace of 9 Supremes and see the changes. Also tell everyone about it. You and Lingxi have to cultivate faster as well. If I'm not mistaken, the ultimate war between the 2 sides is about to begin. Shangguan Lingxiu said, All right. I'll go back now. Right, you're not going back? I do have something to do. I won't go back for now. Yin Yang said in a low voice. All right. Shangguan Lingxiu did not ask further about Yin Yang's whereabouts. Instead, she stood up and left in a rainbow. As Yin Yang watched Shangguan Lingxiu leave, he tore the space apart and went to God's grave. Their return to the bound of universe this time was also through this node. However, with Shangguan Lingxiu by their side and his cultivation base on the verge of a breakthrough, they did not return the god's bones right away. Yin Yang was worried about the promise he had made back then. Of course, it would take a lot of effort to fulfill the promise, but after returning all the god's bones, the gods and demons would definitely be revived or other variables would appear. He might not be able to take care of Shangguan Lingxiu then. Now that Shangguan Lingxiu had left and Yin Yang possessed the cultivation base of a saint, he no longer had to worry. Naturally, he felt more confident. Even if the deity's heart is treacherous and has ulterior motives, I'm not afraid. Besides, everything is still up in the air. Yin Yang opened the god's grave, his eyes filled with warmth as he stepped in. As soon as he entered, the desolate land immediately changed. Countless phantoms and many semi-corporeal phantoms appeared. Young friend, you're here again. Young friend, your cultivation base has improved again. You're like a different person compared to before. You're truly a generous person. I wonder why you're here again this time. Fortunately, I didn't disappoint you. Yin Yang did not waste his breath. He took out his spatial ring and poured all the god's bones he had stored in it onto the ground, taking out the weapons as well. At the same time he looked around. Unsurprisingly, he saw that there was a weapon placed near many of the skeletons in God's grave. Many gods' bones suddenly appeared in the god's grave. In an instant, there was a whirling air current. Then, the god's bones on the ground floated in midair. It was a spectacular sight. Yun Yang immediately sensed that the countless phantoms, and even the semi-tangible ones, were all staring intently at the god's bones. Only the elder who sat in the center did not show any urgency. He bowed deeply at Yin Yang and said, "Young friend, you're a man of your word. If this is done, this old man thanks you for your kindness on behalf of the god's grave's remnant souls." The other phantoms came to their senses at once and stopped their restlessness. They bowed in unison and said, "Thank you, young friend, for your kindness. We were too distracted and have been impolite." "You're welcome." Yin Yang was not offended. "Let's see if anything is missing. Heaven and earth are not complete. We really don't expect to retrieve all the god's bones that have been left behind. Young friend, you've already retrieved more than 90% of the god's bones. If we were to ask for more, we wouldn't be worthy of being human beings." The elder looked emotional. "Besides, as long as we have these, we can retrieve the rest ourselves. Then there's nothing else for me to do. I won't disturb you any longer." Yin Yang said, "It's been a long time since we've seen each other physically. Now is the time of great joy. I shall take my leave now." Before he could finish, the elder shook his head and said, "Hold on, young friend. You've done us such a great favor. If you leave just like this, how can we still live in this world? Please, young friend, stay a little longer." Immediately after, the old man ordered, "Return to your positions." Feng Lingtian said, "My wife didn't let me go to Beijing to study. She asked me to find one locally. There's only one technical college in Laiwu. I said, it's not appropriate for a man like me to visit a brothel. Then I got beaten up. Chapter 1439. The order was given. All the gods' bones glowed brightly in the air, as if they had received the order. Yin Yang focused his gaze, and saw that countless gods' bones were glowing with a white light. Countless specks of light were scattered on the piles of bones on the ground. A moment later, the mini skeletons seemed to respond with specks of white light as they rose from the ground. As far as Yin Yang could see, the immortal golden-armored warriors stood up from the ground, as if they had been created out of thin air. Their limbs were complete, their facial features distinct, and every pair of eyes that looked at him were filled with gratitude. More and more stood up. 10, 100, 1,000, thousands, tens of thousands. As he watched, Yin Yang was stunned. "Kill them all. I've brought back quite a number of God's bones, but not this many. How could this be?" More and more people stood up. It was no longer limited to the godly generals in golden armor. There were elders in loose robes, scholars in white, burly men with dark faces and round eyebrows, as well as countless graceful fairies, celestial children, jade maidens, and mythical beasts. The world that had been dead and silent was coming alive bit by bit before Yin Yang's eyes. Even the land beneath his feet was no longer lifeless. Instead, it was filled with jade herbs and celestial flowers. Jade palaces, and palaces that connected the heavens could be seen in the distance. Immortal fog lingered and white clouds drifted leisurely. Yes, this was a world of immortals that only existed in legends. Yin Yang's eyes were fixed on a seedling that had just sprouted beneath his feet. There was a glistening 7-colored fruit hanging from it, glowing brightly. It was the spiritual herb, the moonlight vermilion fruit. It was a moonlight vermilion fruit that was more than 70,000 years old. Only a moonlight vermilion fruit that was more than 70,000 years old could produce a fruit with 7 colors. A 70,000-year-old heavenly treasure. And it was a top-grade heavenly treasure that did not belong to the human world. It was simply too shocking. No, there shouldn't be any shock. Because in this place, it was simply everywhere. Instinctively, Yin Yang sucked in a deep breath, feeling the flesh and blood of his entire body rejoicing, and his cultivation base stirring in anticipation. Gradually, on the other side of the clouds, countless people seemed to have flown over from the edge of the sky, lining up in front of Yin Yang. Then, all of them bowed to the ground in unison. "We express our gratitude to you. Thank you, young friend Yin Yang, for your kindness. We will never forget it." Yin Yang heaved a soft sigh of relief and said softly, "Everyone, You are too courteous. I have been entrusted with a task, so I do not deserve such gratitude. To me it's just a slight effort. 99% of it is due to fate and not intentional. Everyone's actions have instead made me afraid. There's no need to be overly courteous. Please stay. Although that was what he said, he still stood there steadily and accepted everyone's salute. Yun Yang's cultivation base had advanced to the level of a saint. His knowledge and experience had broadened as well, allowing him to understand the significance of the return of God's bones and the return of the gods to their rightful places at a deeper level. No matter how simple the matter was, it was still an indescribable favor to the gods before him. If he didn't accept this bow, the gods would never be able to completely repay this karma. The other gods were at the forefront. The elder who led them had already changed into a regal attire. His gaze on Yun Yang was filled with approval and approval. He understood the deeper meaning behind Yun Yang's acceptance of the bow. To Yun Yang, if he had avoided the bow or returned it, the others would have felt better, but the favor could not be erased. On the other hand, Yun Yang stood there and accepted the bow. In terms of cause and effect, this matter ends here. I accept your gratitude. I've been entrusted with a task, and I've fulfilled my promise. My gratitude is sufficient. This was not arrogance, nor was it putting on airs. On the contrary, it was a display of great kindness and kindness, an expression of the wish to treat each other as equals. Only by smoothing out the past and treating everyone as equals from the bottom of his heart would he need to do so. After this, he wanted to be friends with everyone. He didn't need everyone to see him as a benefactor. Not only was this gesture sincere, it was also solemn. Young friend, after today, our fallen celestial court will leave this place of confinement and return to heaven. This old man doesn't mean that we'll never meet again. Instead, I'll definitely come to play and chat with you when I'm free. We hope very much that we can become best friends in the future. It'd be even better if we're brothers. Yun Yang had intended to say this, but the emperor of the celestial court before him had said it first. In spite of this, the meaning behind his words was extraordinary. It was also a display of great kindness, and it was also a way to return a favor. As the saying goes, to return a plum with a peach, words were irrelevant. Only actions would be meaningful. Yun Yang is more than happy to do so. Yun Yang smiled warmly. We'll stay here for another day to recall the gods' bones that are out there, and then we'll leave. Little friend, as a small repayment for what you've done, you can take everything in the divine court as long as you take a liking to it. The entire celestial court is at your disposal, young friend, and you can have whatever you want. After today, the celestial court will no longer exist. It's not difficult for us to find you, young friend, but it'll be rather difficult for you to find us. Haha. Yin Yang smiled faintly. We're friends. It's not nice if we talk about repayment and so on. I don't have any interest in worldly things here. Let's wait for the future, when you're free, to come and have a cup of tea with me. That'll be the best repayment for me. Ha 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 ha. The few authoritative figures of the celestial court laughed in unison, obviously appreciating Yin Yang more and more. Since young friend insists on not taking it, this old man shall represent the brothers to give you a little souvenir. The leading elder handed over a spatial ring and said, This is just a small token between friends. If young friend refuses even this, then you'll be looking down on me. Yin Yang laughed and accepted the ring solemnly, saying, How can this young brother not accept a gift from my brother? Greedy. Both parties conversed for a while. Yin Yang knew that the elder seemed to have recovered completely, but he had only just recovered. There were many things to do, and he still had to work on retrieving the missing god's bones. So he bade farewell. The elder did not urge him to stay, sending Yin Yang to the entrance of the road before saying, Young friend, take care when you go back. We have plenty of time in the future. Right. The celestial court has been duplicated, but the order of heaven and earth hasn't been restored yet. It's because the ghost court was completely destroyed back then, even worse than the celestial court. It needs a fated person to rebuild it. Young friend, you're someone with the greatest providence in this world. It's fine if you're fated to lend a hand. Helping out is a form of good karma. Then he bowed solemnly and waved goodbye. Yun Yang, who had made a promise and gained another karma, exited the celestial court. When he turned to look again, the air was filled with swirling mist. Then the celestial court disappeared completely, even more untraceable than before. Yun Yang had long expected the celestial court's disappearance, so he did not think much of it. Instead, he was thinking about the elder's last words. Ghost Court. It needs a fated person to rebuild it? Also, am I someone with the greatest providence in this world? Does this world refer to the Tianxian continent, or the bound of universe as well? Why did the elder's tone sound so certain? As if he thought that Yun Yang would definitely meet the so-called fated person. Then who is the fated person? I have indeed met quite a number of people and sects related to spirits and spirits, such as the God's Mausoleum's remnant soul, the world-wrecking soul demon, the 10,000-year-old soul head that has just been annihilated, and the bound of universe's cannon fodder, the Thousand Ghost sect. These can all be classified as the underworld system. However, the God's Mausoleum's remnant soul and spiritual bones have been reconstructed, and the soul demon and old soul head Qin have already perished in my hands. It seems that none of these have anything to do with the Ghost Court. The most similar to the Ghost Court would probably be Tianxuan's old friends, the concourse of the underworld. Back then, after the concourse of the underworld entered the haunting temple, there was no news of them. Until now, there was still no news of them. When Yin Yang came back to Tianxian this time, he had used his deific consciousness to search for information about them in his free time. But it was to no avail. Could it be that they were actually rebuilding the Ghost Court? Yun Yang immediately thought of their self-proclaimed names. The 10 Court Kings, Xidagarba, and the Black and White Impermanents. It might really be them. The so-called haunting temple might be the underworld's underworld. If that was the case, then it was all the more reason for him to lend them a hand. Throughout the entire Tianxian continent, when it came to the origin of friendship, the concourse of the underworld, and the 9 supremes were the ones who had many inseparable ties. Without stopping, Yun Yang took out the spatial ring given by the elder, and opened it to take a look. He was stunned on the spot. Since Yun Yang's debut, he had had many fortuitous encounters, and the wealth he had accumulated was shocking. There were few people in this world who could compare to him, and there was almost nothing in this world that could stun him at first glance. However, when he saw what was inside the ring, his heart could not help but skip a beat as he stood rooted to the ground. What shocked Yun Yang was the spatial ring itself. Yun Yang was known as the 9-feet-high sky swallows plucking feathers from passing them, and the spatial ring was a must-have for any cultivator in the bound of universe when traveling and cultivating. Therefore, Yun Yang had owned countless spatial rings. It would not be an exaggeration to say that they were uncountable, but this was the first time he had seen such a unique spatial ring. Not only was the internal space of the spatial ring ridiculously large, almost boundless, but it was also automatically divided into 9 layers, dividing the internal space into 10 areas. Each space had its own unique category of items. The first space, 50,000 years of various heaven and earth resources, 1 million portions. The second space, 80,000 years of heaven and earth resources, 500,000 portions. The third space, 100,000 years of heaven and earth resources, 100,000 portions. The fourth space, 100,000 years of heaven and earth resources, 100,000 portions. The fifth space, 200,000 years of heaven and earth resources, 3,000 portions. The sixth space, 500,000 years of heaven and earth resources, 3,000 portions. The above spaces contained heaven and earth resources, and not only did they have the ability to store them, they also had the ability to nurture them. The spaces were embedded with nurturing formations that could absorb the spiritual chi of heaven and earth on their own, so that the heaven and earth resources could always be maintained in the best and most perfect state. This alone was enough to make Yun Yang gasp in amazement. Yun Yang had Emi and a deific consciousness space, so he should not be praising this function. However, most of the advantages of a spatial ring lay in its capacity and storage. Time seemed to stop, But there would always be a certain amount of wear and tear to the heaven and earth resources stored within. There were very few spatial rings that came with the ability to keep things fresh forever. However, this spatial ring had done it. This alone could already be classified as a rare treasure. The seventh space of the spatial ring was filled with books. There were more than a dozen large bookshelves, and on them were alchemy techniques, cultivation techniques, all kinds of martial arts techniques, spells, magical powers, and strange abilities. There was everything one could think of, from the lowest to the highest level. The eighth space after that contained countless rare metals and metals, even the heart of a planet. The number was huge, and the variety was so complete that Yun-Yang felt that he was actually not that rich. After looking through the 8 spaces, Yun-Yang could not wait to look at the 9th space, but he was greatly disappointed. It was because there were all sorts of treasured sabers, swords, and other weapons, a total of 10,000 of them. It was a pity that their quality was only of superb quality, so much worse than what Emmy had produced. Naturally, they did not catch Yun-Yang's attention, which made him regain a lot of confidence. After looking through the contents of the last space, Yun-Yang felt a little dizzy again. There was nothing in the last space, only a piece of paper with only one sentence written on it. "If there's a command, I'll die for it." Beneath the words was a dazzling golden mark, as well as a flamboyant signature that one couldn't tell what it was. "It's too heavy. This gift of gratitude is too heavy." Even with Yin-Yang's vast experience, he could not help feeling shaken when he saw the items in the spatial ring. It had to be said that the gift of gratitude was indeed heavy, especially the sincerity that was expressed in it. Putting aside the treasures of heaven and earth, any one of them, even those of the lowest grade, would be priceless and rare in the bound of universe. The weapons that contained celestial power at the end, other than being incomparable to the psychic weapons that Emmy had made, were also rare divine weapons of the highest grade that were hard to come by. There was also the letter of commitment that was stamped with the Celestial Emperor's seal. As if a seal was not enough, the Celestial Emperor's personal signature had been added. This was the embodiment of sincerity. Perhaps Yun-Yang might not be able to use this favor in this lifetime, but it was indeed the most important thing to him. "If I'd really asked for it, our fate would have ended here. Even if we were to meet again in the future, it'd only be based on benefits and not on friendship. Luckily, I didn't ask for it." Yun-Yang stroked his chin and snorted inwardly. "If I'd taken it myself, it wouldn't have been as much as these. I'm someone who cares about my reputation as well. How can I take it seriously? Indeed, the honest are blessed, and the virtuous will be rewarded." Emmy could not help but vomit in the space. "You have the nerve to call yourself someone who cares about his reputation? Honest man? Virtuous? Sigh, I'm just a plant. But I can't help but throw up." However, as Yin-Yang moved all the treasured gems in the ring into his deific consciousness space, Emmy could no longer care about vomiting. It was so excited that it was incoherent, almost fainting as tears of joy rolled down its cheeks. There were too many, too high-end, too classy, too satisfied. After Emmy recovered from its excitement, it opened up another 10,000 acres of herb garden at once, instructing its little elves to mix all the spiritual plants from the realm of God with the spiritual herbs from before. It was a humongous project. However, Emmy's deific consciousness had already controlled every corner of the deific consciousness space. It stared fixedly at it, not allowing any mistakes to be made. The task was obviously not something that could be completed in a short amount of time. Yun-Yang could only leave it be after he moved it in, but the little elves inside would probably lose a size, or even 2 sizes under Emmy's control this time. Although he was no longer paying attention, and was only waiting, Yun-Yang could still feel that the spiritual qi in his deific consciousness space had increased by a few levels since these newly acquired spiritual herbs had entered his deific consciousness space. In addition, it was still increasing. Obviously, there was still a lot of room for improvement. This was probably because Emmy had just started taking action and had yet to handle it properly. When everything was settled and everything was thriving, Yun-Yang believed that there would be even greater changes by then. Perhaps, it would be a possibility of a quantitative change, leading to a qualitative change. Even so, as the high-quality spiritual qi from the deific consciousness space seeped into his body bit by bit, Yun-Yang could still feel his cultivation base growing, even if he was just sitting still and did not cultivate. This transaction is worth it. I've profited greatly. It was at this moment, somewhere far away, a loud rumble came suddenly, as if the earth was splitting and the sky was collapsing, shaking heaven and earth. Yun-Yang looked towards the source of the sound, and was shocked to see that the hundreds of mountains in the barren land had all disappeared, leaving only a huge, bottomless hole on the ground where they once stood. Within this hole, there was an endless amount of black qi that surged into the sky, gradually filling up the firmament. In just a moment, the place was filled with eerie winds and ghostly qi. The entire bound of universe, including the demon race, was shaken to an unprecedented degree. Dongfang Haoran and the others who were discussing on the other side felt shaken at the same time, as if something uncontrollable and irresistible, yet closely related, had happened in this world. The three juggernauts were unwilling to be slow. They moved in unison, tearing through the space to rush to the location of the incident, only to see the huge pitch-black hole slowly calming down. In the end, it turned into a flat ground that was no different from before. The black hole had disappeared. However, the eerie and ghostly qi did not dissipate. Instead, it swirled and gathered in the air, turning into a pitch-black stone tablet. There were a few words written on the stone tablet. From today onwards, Sun Luo stands. Feng Lingtian said. Actually, I want to drag it out, but this book seems to know that I want to drag it out. They're stubbornly advancing according to the original plot. It seems like I can't drag it out any longer from the end of the book. Chapter 1440. From today onwards, Sun Luo will be established. It seemed to be announcing something, but it also seemed to be declaring something. Then, the black stone tablet sank slowly and finally disappeared. Even with the three rulers' cultivation base, they could not sense where the stone tablet had gone. It was at this time that Yin-Yang's silhouette came through the air and saw Dongfang Haoran and the others. What happened? Dongfang Haoran's expression was solemn as he explained. This is extremely strange. I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse. From today onwards, Sun Luo will be established? Yin-Yang's brows furrowed slightly before relaxing. He smiled and said, It's not a small matter indeed. But for humans it's a good thing, a very good thing. Good thing. A very good thing. Dongfang Haoran and the others were puzzled. Yin-Yang guffawed, but did not offer any explanation. He took to the air and disappeared in the blink of an eye. B***starred explained clearly. The three rulers were furious and chased after him. King Hell. We've always been the ones keeping others in suspense. Today, we're the ones being kept in suspense. We can't stand it. That stone tablet is strange. It's fine if it disappeared without a trace. Yin-Yang, even if you've advanced to saint level, do you think you can play tricks and disappear in front of the three of us? The three rulers were experienced masters. Although Yin-Yang had reached the same level, he was too new to be able to shake off the three of them. It was a pity that he did not get any answers, even when they chased him all the way to the Palace of Nine Supremes. The scene startled everyone in the Palace of Nine Supremes. These three bosses have come after our boss with such murderous intent. What do they want? Were they planning to gather the forces of the three heavenly palaces to go against the Palace of Nine Supremes? The Palace of Nine Supremes was developing well, and its strength was formidable. But when it came to the three heavenly palaces, they could not even fight one against one, let alone three. Faced with the three bosses' threats, promises, and torture, Yin-Yang refused to comply. From the beginning to the end, he did not say a word. The three of them were fuming with rage. Since you don't want to talk, then don't. We'll stay in the Palace of Nine Supremes for now. The three of them rolled their eyes at the same time. Who were these three men? Their spiritual senses and martial senses were so sharp that they had long noticed that the spiritual qi density in the Palace of Nine Supremes was not only higher than that of the three heavenly palaces, but it was at least 10 times denser. Moreover, the atmosphere here was unusually stable, and it would not diminish just because there were too many people who cultivated tirelessly over and over again. In terms of cultivation environment, cultivating here was much better than cultivating in the heavenly palace. Although the three great dwellings had reached the peak of this world, they still had the desire to improve. Cultivating in such an environment was also a great thing. You're not leaving? Yin Yang asked. There's no hurry. We plan to stay here for 3 to 7 years, maybe even 8 to 10 years. Why don't we make the Palace of Nine Supremes the command headquarters for the war between the two realms? We'll stay here for a long time and oversee the overall situation. It'll save us the trouble of having to meet each other. Yin Yang felt a headache coming on. Why don't I tell you what's going on? You can leave quickly after that. It was not that Yin Yang wanted to admit defeat, but he had no choice but to lower his head when he was under someone else's roof. If these three men really decided to stay in the Palace of Nine Supremes, all their supplies and expenses would have to be provided according to the best standards, at least Ji Lingxi and Shangguan Lingxiu's standards. Although it was not enough to bankrupt the Palace of Nine Supremes, it was still a considerable expense. Furthermore, the total amount of spiritual qi that these three men absorbed every day was also a terrifying number. The three heavenly palaces were not the best paradise in this world, but it was largely due to the three old men's years of swallowing that the spiritual qi was relatively low. If all three of them stayed in the Palace of Nine Supremes, even if the Palace of Nine Supremes' spiritual qi was much better than the three heavenly palaces, there would come a day when the place would be drained. This was a truth that Yin Yang had only discovered after he had ascended to the level of a saint. Therefore, even if he had to compromise and tell the truth, he hoped to send these three men away as soon as possible. They were not three distinguished guests, but three vampires. All right, we won't be leaving after that. Your place is very good, very good. We're very satisfied. The three of them were unperturbed. They each went to find a quiet hut, and then they really went to live in it. Yin Yang dared not let these three men stay for a long time. After a round of verbal sparring, they finally reached a consensus. We won't be staying for too long. We'll leave when the Supreme Heaven Pavilion selection is over. All of us will leave without delay. You don't have to bother to entertain us either. Just treat us like family. We don't need any food or drink. In spite of this, the Palace of Nine Supremes' eyebrows were still twitching. How dare you say such things? With your cultivation base, you can go without food for tens of thousands of years. Of course, you don't need to provide anything, and we don't even plan to provide anything for you. Don't think that we didn't see your shameless faces. You're just taking advantage of us. What we're really troubled about is the massive consumption of spiritual qi caused by the addition of three high-level saints at once. It's bound to be shared with many people. At the very least, cultivating dozens of miles away from these three men would not have much effect, if not no effect at all. Dong Qitian was the one who was speechless. These three bastards from the three residences actually chose the back of the mountain. That's where I live, my territory. I've always been the only one occupying that place. How can I cultivate when the three of you come? In terms of spiritual qi absorption, I can't even catch up to the three of you. I respected these three bosses quite a bit, but now it looks like they're three bastards and gangsters. From today onwards, I'll move to the front hall. Dong Qitian told Ping Xiaoyi. Find another place and wait until the three perverted old men leave. Ping Xiaoyi was dumbfounded. You're picking on the weak, aren't you? Am I the weakest among the entire Palace of Nine Supremes higher-ups? You're calling them perverted old men. But how much better can you be? Ping Xiaoyi left in grief and indignation. F***ck. I'd rather die than be the weakest. I'm going to cultivate with all my might. Grief and indignation notwithstanding, he still had to move. How could he not lower his head when he was under someone else's roof? How could he not compromise when the circumstances were stronger than his? Dong Qitian was the same, and so was Ping Xiaoyi. The rest of you, go out and train quickly. Don't stay at home for now. After Yin Yang gave a few guidance on his disciples' cultivation methods and questions, he immediately ordered them to scram out of the martial world. How's Majordomo Qian? Seeing that Ji Lingxi was not back yet, he knew that Qian Duoduo was not done yet. The integration of the 4 schools' fixed trade routes has been completed. Appointments and removals have been carried out twice as well. Those who are unqualified and incompetent have all been cleared out. The Palace of 9 Supremes trade routes are now unimpeded. Among the peak masters, Kong Luoyue and Tai Ching Sung were currently on duty, so it was Kong Luoyue who had spoken. Is there any movement from the Qian family? Don't they claim to be the leader of the 3 aristocratic families? Why did they admit defeat just like that? Yin Yang was surprised. How can there be no movement? Kong Luoyue rolled his eyes and said, the assassin organizations that the Qian family hired and we've annihilated have exceeded 300 in these few months alone. We've taken advantage of the situation and sent a few peak masters to hunt down the assassin organizations in the world. There are more than 1,200 of them. Until now, there are almost no assassin organizations left in the entire Bound of Universe. Many of them had already disbanded when we attacked their nests. Assassin, an officially recognized profession in the Bound of Universe, is rarely done. It's almost extinct. Kong Luoyue coughed and said, now, the loot we've obtained from annihilating the assassin organizations is piling up. Many sects, including the temples and the 3 heavenly palaces, are saying that we've destroyed the continent's employment environment. This can't be allowed to continue. Yin Yang chuckled and asked, what do you mean by that? They say that the martial world has its own rules of survival. It's the martial world where good and bad people mingle. It's the martial world where bloodshed and slaughter exist. We've cleaned up the martial world forcefully and wiped out the assassins. It looks like the world is peaceful. But how can our disciples train when they go out to roam the martial world in the future? It's the martial world where there are people. There will be no fish when the water is too clear. And there will be no martial world when the martial world is too clean. Kong Luoyue chuckled as if he was mocking himself. What they say makes sense. The existence of those organizations is like a link in the martial world's food chain. They're indispensable indeed. Once there's a gap in the food chain, it'll only lead to more collapses and disintegration. If not, the 3 heavenly palaces only need to send a few saint-level experts to wipe them out from all directions, and they'll be wiped out long ago. Yin Yang rolled his eyes and pursed his lips. That's why I said all of you are honest. Is what they're saying reasonable? It's just twisted logic. How can you believe it? Let's not talk about anything else. Do you really want the few saints to go after these assassin organizations? It'd be a miracle if they could wipe them all out. Even I don't have the confidence to kill all the assassins in the world. The profession of assassins has existed since the beginning of time. How can they be wiped out by mere humans? Besides, do you think we've cleaned up the martial world just because we've moved frequently and gained a lot? Let me tell you, we're still far from it. As long as you think deeper, it's not difficult to figure out that the martial world has no lack of martial artists who take risks. The fastest way to earn money is none other than robbery and murder. How can such a highly rewarding profession be wiped out? Why do you think the Bound of Universe has listed assassins as a legitimate profession? It's because we've witnessed the tenacious vitality of this profession. Even now, it's only because we've killed too many of them that they don't dare to show themselves for the time being. When this wind blows over, they'll still be the same. Besides, there are a few top-notch assassin organizations in the martial world with formidable abilities, especially those assassins who have ascended to legendary status. They might not be weaker than you guys. I'm sure a few of them are even stronger than you guys. They haven't even made a move yet. Any profession has people who can support it. There's a saying that every profession has its own champion. There's another way to explain this saying. The champion, the pinnacle, the top expert, they're all the same. Yin Yang said, we're in the limelight now. There won't be any forces that are willing to fight us to the death. Let's ignore them and do as we should. Boss is right. None of those legendary assassins have made a move. Soul Fall Bell Longevity Sword, Soul Breaking Spear, Flawless Saber, and the rest are silent. Kong Luoyue said. However, there has been no news of the Qian family's movements in the last 10 days or so. Our men have already eaten away almost a third of their business. The Qian family is slowly showing signs of defeat. but I have a feeling that they won't be so willing to be slaughtered. Yin Yang snorted and said, "Your concern is right. An established family like the Qian family won't wait for death without a fight. The hired assassins on the surface are just a facade. The final showdown hasn't even begun. The so-called defeat is, of course, an illusion. The more it is so, the more we should strengthen our defenses and be cautious. Ask those outside to go to Qian Duodua's side in secret. Watch the situation. The Qian family has tens of thousands of years of history, and they're a veteran gold celestial luck banner sect. How can they be easy to deal with?" "Yes, I understand. The major domo has Lingxi personally guarding over there. He can attack openly without fear, but he still has to be wary of sneak attacks. Especially when there's a sneak attack after a period of peace. If there's nothing important in the sect, ask Gu Chaoyang to rush over as well." After arranging these matters, Yin Yang began to look at the disciple roster. The disciple roster was the most troublesome thing in the residence of 9 Supremes. Ever since the rule was made, each peak leader had been tormented by this disciple roster. Even when the authority had been delegated to the senior disciples, they still complained incessantly. The main reason why this name list was so intimidating was because of his son. On this name list, not only did it list the most basic information like the name, age, and gender of the sect's disciples, it also included the last disciple's cultivation level when they submitted the name list, and this time's cultivation level. This could not be falsified. Everyone had to be gathered and verified one by one. However, this was the root of all the trouble. Often, when someone had just been registered, this person would suddenly break through when one was checking on the others. Strictly speaking, such a situation could happen in any sect, but there was no sect that could be like the Palace of 9 Supremes, where dozens or even hundreds of people broke through in a day. Recently, especially cultivation-based breakthroughs were almost as common as having a meal. The task of reporting and recording had become a huge chore. As a result, this responsibility was rotated among the Palace of 9 Supremes disciples. Whenever someone's name was called, almost all the disciples would look at him sympathetically. This fellow was so pitiful to be dragged into this task again. He was so unlucky. The progress is not bad. Yin Yang flipped through it briefly and put it aside. Ping Zhanyue, who was originally the leader of the Phoenix Cry sect, rolled her eyes. Such progress is only considered not bad? Do you know that if such results were in the original Phoenix Cry sect, even if only one or half of them made such a leap, the entire sect would at least celebrate. Even in their dreams, they would not have dreamed of such a wonderful thing. Low-level disciples definitely won't be able to make it to the war between the two clans this time. Yin Yang told Ping Zhanyue regretfully, "There are still benefits to improving slower." Ping Zhanyue was dumbfounded. Then she choked and coughed violently. "Head Venerate, your focus isn't right. This is slow. This is slow. Do you want others to live? Every single one of these low-level disciples you speak of has the ability to become a leader or an elder in other lower-class sects as long as they're released. I don't have anything in common with you." It was only when everyone had left that Yin Yang finally stretched his back. Finally, it's all right. For a moment, he actually felt his whole body relax, and it was a very relaxing feeling. He had been careful and cautious with every step he took. He also had to bear the weight of a large sect at all times. The pressure was immense. Moreover, there was the demon race's seal, and the restriction of his powers. Now that the seal was gone and the sect was strengthened, its ability growing by leaps and bounds, reaching the pinnacle of the world. In another half a year, the Palace of 9 Supremes' ability would probably be no weaker than the 3 heavenly palaces. Thinking of this, Yin Yang stroked his chin and suddenly remembered, now that my ability has reached this level, I'll need to send someone to the Bloody Soul Mountain to guard a foothold. I'll have to discuss with the 3 Dongfang tribesmen then. It was not a big deal. He could indeed breathe a sigh of relief. Even Shangguan Lingxiu, who was by his side, could clearly feel that Yin Yang had truly breathed a sigh of relief. For a moment, she could not help but exclaim, "You can finally rest." She had watched Yin Yang carry the mountain-like pressure from the Tianxian continent all the way to the bound of universe. Seeing that Yin Yang could finally relax a little today, She could not help reminiscing about the past, feeling an inexplicable ache in her heart. It had not been easy for her man. Yun-yang laughed and said, I'm suddenly relaxed. Even with my current cultivation base, I still feel like I'm in a trance. It's strange. Shangguan Lingxiu held his hand tenderly and said softly, You're just too tired. Chapter 1441. During this period of leisure, Yun-yang would occasionally oversee the Palace of Nine Supremes. Other than watching his disciples cultivate, his other work was to further improve some of the imperfections in the Palace of Nine Supremes. For example, Yun-yang had changed the original merit redemption standard to a point system. This way, even if he did not have enough points, he could try to accumulate them slowly. It was no longer like before, where he had to have enough points in one go to redeem the target item. Then, of course, he placed a massive amount of resources into the exchange warehouse. There were many mature heaven and earth treasures, mystical metals, spiritual crystals of various colors, mystical weapons, and strange cultivation methods. Even without me, these are enough for this sect to develop for more than 100,000 years. Yun-yang exhaled softly. As for the top-notch items that should not exist in this world, Yun-yang did not put them in. If they were placed inside, they would become a source of trouble. He then placed countless seedlings in the Palace of Nine Supremes herb farm. These were the byproducts of Amy's transplanting of the spiritual herbs. The Palace of Nine Supremes was rich in spiritual qi, so it was convenient for it to nurture spiritual herbs on its own. After he was done with these, Yun-yang strengthened the foundation formation of the Palace of Nine Supremes by 10 times. This was already beyond the scope of extravagance. When the residence of Nine Supremes was first built, Yun-yang had already used up tens of thousands of ethereal amethysts to set up the foundation formation. This time, with the tenfold reinforcement, Yun-yang had added another 100,000 ethereal amethysts in one go. Unless the 10 saints work together, the mountain guarding formation is indestructible. Yun-yang felt that it was not enough after placing the ethereal amethysts in, so he modified the underground spiritual vein of the Palace of Nine Supremes and set up another formation. The formation was not huge, but the materials used were even more shocking. It included 10 wisps of qi of Tao, 10 wisps of qi of vitality, 10 wisps of qi of heaven Tao, and 10 wisps of qi of the innate soul. With these strange qi as the foundation, the formation contained an endless supply of nourishing qi that could sustain the Palace of Nine Supremes for hundreds of thousands of years. To ensure that nothing went wrong, the foundation of Yin-Yang's nurturing formation was an innate spirit-gathering seal. It could ensure that the formation would absorb the spiritual qi of heaven and earth and operate on its own for countless years. Only then could the strange qi of heaven and earth operate and grow on its own, never changing. It was also from this day onward that the residence of Nine Supremes truly transformed into the best cultivation sanctuary in the entire bound of universe. Even if one was born a wastrel, his aptitude would gradually change and be reborn after spending some time in the Palace of Nine Supremes. From now on, there will be no limits to the cultivation of the martial artists of mysterious universe. Yun-yang looked at everything he had set up in anticipation. This is just a seed, a sliver of opportunity, a bit of karma. In the future, this place will produce countless experts. Yun-yang's longing was not baseless. The so-called extraordinary aptitude and unparalleled talent, the exquisite phoenix physique, the innate Taoist aptitude and whatnot, would no longer be the limit. It would only be a slightly higher starting point. This was because children with such a physique would also slowly evolve their physiques. As for how far it could evolve, no one could say for sure. However, it was certain that these aptitudes would no longer be the ceiling of one's cultivation talent. Yun-yang had a premonition that he might not stay in this world for too long, so he had made arrangements in advance to prepare for a rainy day. For 3 whole months, Yun-yang really did not step out of the Palace of Nine Supremes. Although he had relaxed and even temporarily put aside his cultivation, the progress of his cultivation did not stop. The main reason was probably the endless divine art. The cultivation of the endless divine art required the chi of karma, and the chi of karma produced by the demon race's civil war and massacre was being transmitted here intermittently, although yin-yang's cultivation base was no longer advancing by leaps and bounds. There was still improvement every day. Therefore, the only one who was not satisfied during this period of time was Shangguan Lingxiu. Yin-yang had not been able to break through her insistence, and there were a few times when the same thing happened again. Then one day, Shangguan Lingxiu suddenly ran away. "How long are you all going to keep me in? Can there be an end to these days? There's some hope." Yin-yang roared in grief and indignation. "I have 2 wives. But I'm still a virgin when I reach the cultivation base of a saint. How tragic. Is there even a way to write this book?" Dongfang Haoran and the other 2 did not move in the residence of 9 Supremes for 3 months. In the beginning, they only felt that their cultivation base was growing rapidly. But after some time, they unexpectedly realized that their realizations had increased. The 3 of them had been here for 3 months. When they felt something and opened their eyes again, they were shocked to find that their cultivation base that had stagnated for a long time had advanced by a small level. The 3 of them were inexplicably shocked by the result. When one's cultivation base had reached such a level, it was no longer as difficult as ascending to heaven to describe it. It was almost impossible. Forget 3 months. Even if it was 3,000 years, they might not even be able to move a little. It was all due to the painstaking effort of the years, little by little progress. Now, however, there was a change after 3 months in the residence of 9 Supremes. This was clearly a miracle. Once the 3 of them came out of seclusion and stood at the highest point of the palace of 9 Supremes, their hearts were filled with emotion. When they looked at Yin-yang again, there was even a tinge of jealousy. "This fellow is here every day. We should go to the Supreme Heaven Pavilion. It's almost time." The Supreme Heaven Pavilion has revealed itself much earlier than expected since it glowed. It's better to do this as soon as possible. The 3 rulers felt that it was strange that the selection of Supreme Heaven Pavilion had been brought forward, so they suggested that it should be carried out earlier. "All right." Yin-yang nodded in agreement. However, the 4 of them did not depart immediately. The 3 rulers had extorted a considerable amount of chi of vitality from Yin-yang before they left the palace of 9 Supremes with Yin-yang in satisfaction. "Don't come again in the future." Yin-yang's face was as black as charcoal. "I've always been the one robbing others. When have I ever been robbed? I, the raiders of Black and White Ruthless Duo, have never been so humiliated. I've had my feathers plucked. And it's not enough to be plucked once, I have to be plucked again. Every time I come, I have to be robbed. How can there be such a logic in this world? Why do I feel that the sudden advance of Supreme Heaven Pavilion selection this time has something to do with Yin-yang?" Shiman Fafu mumbled as they flew. Dongfang Haoran nodded in agreement. "Isn't it a coincidence? I feel the same way too." Beigong Liuli said angrily. "You 2 old fools can't just link everything together. What if you wrongly accuse a good person? So what if Supreme Heaven Pavilion's selection has been brought forward? Can all the accidents in this world have anything to do with Yin-yang? You're being unreasonable and making things up." Shiman Fafa said. "Then what's the reason? Looking at how confident you are, you must have a better idea. Would you please enlighten me?" Beigong Liuli stroked her chin and said, "I dare not enlighten you. I've suspected Yin-yang in the beginning. After all, he has too many similar records. It's not an exaggeration to add one more. However, even if it's because of him, it's definitely not his intention. After all, he's a good person who gave me dozens of children. This is reasonable enough." Dongfang Haoran and Shiman Fafu flew forward without a word, pursing their lips. "All right, you have a lot of wives, you're awesome. You have a lot of face now, you call the shots, all right? F***CK, this is too much of a blow." Beigong Liuli was still nagging from behind. "You haven't said how many children do you 2 have now?" "I almost didn't react just now. You're changing the topic, aren't you? Why don't you talk about something serious? Creation of life, it's a big deal." Dongfang Haoran and Shiman Fafu remained silent, bursting with their top speed and dashing to the front. Look, these two are even dominators. What kind of bearing is this? Bei Gong Liuli grinned at Yin Yang and said, I'm just asking a question. Look at your dark face. Even I can't stand it. Yin Yang responded with a chuckle and rolled his eyes, flashing him a middle finger. F***ck. Your father gave you the chi of vitality, and you still want to make things up for your father? Is there any place for reasoning in this world? He's a good person who gave me dozens of children. Do you F***king know that there's another way to interpret this? If your father is really an adult, then so be it. But your father is still a virgin. Do you know that? Your father won't take the blame for this. I can't. Since they still had time to spare, these people did not travel by tearing the space apart. After all, it was an extravagant method that consumed a lot of cultivation base. However, Dongfang Haoran, Shimen Fafu, and Yun Yang had long regretted it. Neither of them had expected Bei Gong Liuli, who had always looked like a brute, to be so detestable. On the other side, Ji Lingxi was glowing red from head to toe. It was Yun Yang's nemesis, the red protective glow reappearing in maroon. In front of Ji Lingxi, a black-robed elder was wailing as he was flung away. As he flew, his body disintegrated. As his flesh and blood splattered, even his bones were shattered. His divine sense was like a fire in the wind, flickering and disappearing bit by bit. You, who are you? The black-robed elder howled in agony as he struggled to ask. It doesn't matter who I am. I'm just waiting for you here. Ji Lingxi said coldly, quietly waiting for your attack. The black-robed elder uttered his last hateful words. The Qian family is wrong. Before his words echoed in the air, his body dissipated completely, his divine sense vanishing along with it. He's the Qian family's old forefather, Qian Shuanyue. Qian Duoduo's gaze was filled with a complicated emotion. He's also the Qian family's top expert, a pinnacle expert of this world, a half-saint. Ji Lingxi said faintly, we were waiting for the Qian family's extreme counterattack for this half-saint. If we really went over to question them about the previous assassination, the Qian family would only say that it was done by one of the family's disciples, and used him as a scapegoat. With the Qian family's gold celestial luck banner background, we couldn't use that as an excuse to go to the extreme. Now that the Qian family's old forefather has come personally, this matter can be settled. There's no room for negotiation. Ji Lingxi said faintly, keep the Qian family's old forefather's remains, and order the Palace of Nine Supremes to gather here. Annihilate the Qian family's forces in the entire continent. Shi Wuchen Luo Dajiang, Kong Luoyue. The few of you are in charge of fetching Qian Duoduo's family members out to avoid being held back or threatened. From today onwards, the Qian family's rightful heir in the bound of universe will only be the Palace of Nine Supremes Major Domo, Qian Duoduo. Gu Chaoyang. Issue a declaration of war to the entire continent. Ji Lingxi's murderous intent soared. This war must be fought cleanly and cleanly. Everyone remember this. This is a decisive battle. The goal is not only to destroy the Qian family, but to show the Palace of Nine Supremes' aura, and the lifeline of the Palace of Nine Supremes for generations to come. The Palace of Nine Supremes' general summon was quickly sent across the entire continent. As the summon was issued, the entire continent was in turmoil. On a certain high cliff, Yin Xiuxin, who was in the midst of sparring, suddenly thrust her sword out. Before the sword energy burned, its power rose and shrouded thousands of feet of space like a raging thunderbolt. All her opponents retreated in a panic. After all, the violence of the woman's ultimate move had long been ingrained in everyone's hearts, so no one dared to confront her head-on. Yin Xiuxin laughed and said, "You have won." Then, she soared into the sky and turned into a beam of white light with her sword as she sped away. The others exchanged glances. "Your sword is so powerful that it has forced all of us to retreat. How can you say that we have won?" This senior sister of the Palace of Nine Supremes does not usually have such a breadth of mind. In a secret place, Hu Xiaofan let out a long howl and leaped out of the killing circle. "The treasures here are nothing to me. I don't want them, they belong to you. No matter who gets them, remember to give me 90% of them. I'll hunt you down to the ends of the earth if you dare to disobey. No matter who gets them in the end, I'll know." Then he soared into the sky and sped away. The unexpected turn of events made the other participants in the fight for the secret place a little listless. Although you, Hu Xiaofan, have contributed to the seal of the Forbidden Land here, we are the main force in breaking it. We still don't know if there are any dangers in the Forbidden Land, and what price we will have to pay to explore its secrets. Yet, you just swaggered away, claiming that you want 90% of the benefits. How can there be such a logic in the world? What are we still fighting for? Where are the benefits? We don't even know who will be the winner. But if we get it, we have to share 90% with you, and even send it to your doorstep. Is this a F***king fight for treasures? The rest of the people looked at each other and lowered their weapons. Obviously, their competitive spirit had been extinguished. Let's not fight anymore. Let's not fight anymore. Let's discuss, what should we do with the things here? Ahem, Brother Wang, you are the oldest. Why don't all the benefits here belong to you? F***ck. I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want it either. I don't want it either. How can it be in my eyes? Hu Xiaofan is too wicked. It's fine if he snatched it on the spot. That's because he is so strong that we can't match him. Survival of the fittest is the law of nature. But if I work hard to snatch it, but still have to send him many benefits from tens of thousands of miles away, I can't swallow this. I'd rather not have the benefits here. Who said it wasn't? In the end, the crowd finally came to a decision. Brother Zhang, you are the youngest, have the least cultivation resources, and have the weakest cultivation. Let's just give all the things here to you. That younger brother Zhang. He never thought that he would have such a big pie falling on his head when he just came in to gain some experience. Ahem. You're still young, and you don't care about your reputation. We'll help you sort it out, and then give it to you. You're a great man. Give 90% to that Hu Xiaofan. Ahem, hero Hu. Ahem, hero Hu, yes. Ahem, ahem, ahem. A series of coughs sounded. F***ck. Such a thing still wants others to call him hero. He's not happy to not call him that. Which part of him looks like a hero? Hu Xiaofan's shout was, Hero who is eager for justice. The so-called shout was a name that was widely known only when one called it by oneself. It was completely different from a nickname given by others. All the people in the pugilistic world who knew him would twitch all over when they heard this shout. He had never seen such a hero before. Sneak attacks, fabricate rumors, blackmail, coerce, be greedy for money and be selfish. He would eat everything he had and then take it away, refusing to give it to others. How could such a person have the cheek to call himself hero, who was eager for justice? It's natural for you to help him, but if he helps you, you will go bankrupt, and your children and grandchildren won't be able to repay this favor. How could you call him hero who is eager for justice? Hu Xiaofan's eagerness for justice was indeed true. No matter who was in trouble, he would enthusiastically come to help. But after helping, he asked for remuneration, and even demanded an exorbitant price, making people feel as if the sky was falling down. What kind of explanation was this? There was once a friend in the pugilistic world who quarreled with his friend. The cause was just a moment of anger after getting drunk. The two of them sparred on the spot, and one of them lost. In fact, it was just a fall. Then Hu Xiaofan, who claimed to be his friend, insisted on standing up for his friend. Yes, it was to help. In the end, the two of them went bankrupt and gave it to Hu Xiaofan alone. Not only that, they even wrote an IOU of 100,000 pieces of low-grade spiritual jade. There were so many examples like this, that Hu Xiaofan was now notorious in the pugilistic world. It was to the point that even mystical beasts would turn their heads and run away when they heard these three words. Just because a mystical beast injured its leg, Hu Xiaofan helped it, and then this mystical beast clan sold hundreds of its mystical beasts to become Hu Xiaofan's slaves. Moreover, they signed a contract for 30 generations of their descendants in one go. Tell me, who would dare to ask for his help? Now, if the pugilistic world heard a voice coming from the side, do you need help? Most of the people on both sides would instantly scatter like birds and beasts. They wouldn't even bother to find out who was asking for help. In any case, they wouldn't fight anymore, okay? Hu Xiaofan once created a record. There were two people who had been enemies for generations, and they couldn't live under the same sky. One killed the other's brother, and the other killed the other's sister. Whenever the two of them met, they would fight to the death. However, the cultivation of these two people happened to be on par, and they were evenly matched. There was no clear winner or loser in the end. One day, the two of them made an appointment to fight to the death. In the end, when it was about to happen, Hu Xiaofan rushed over excitedly and asked as usual, "Do you need help?" In the end, the two of them immediately threw down their weapons and hugged each other affectionately. They patted each other's shoulders and called each other brothers with tears in their eyes. "Brother, I misunderstood you. Brother, it's all my fault. No, it's my fault. No." Little brother's heart was clouded by lard. "Don't say anything, let's go have a drink." From then on, the two of them turned hostility into friendship and were betrothed to each other before they were even born. What happened next was a story for another time, but it could still prove how powerful and terrifying Hu Xiaofan's words of help were. On the other side, Yu Qinghang, who was drinking, stood up abruptly and apologized to the people around him. Without another word, he soared into the sky and left quickly. Somewhere, Bai Yesheng soared into the sky without warning and sped away like a shooting star. All the disciples of the Palace of Nine Supremes were heading in the same direction, like moths darting into a flame, one after another. The battle between the Palace of Nine Supremes and the Qian family had affected most of the bound of universe. The Qian family's foundation was undoubtedly profound. It was no longer the top aristocratic family in the bound of universe, but it was still incomparable to the current Palace of Nine Supremes. For this battle, the Palace of Nine Supremes had dispatched 20 Saint Emperors at once, and most of these Saint Emperors were at the pinnacle of third-class and fourth-class Saint Emperors. Other than the top-notch Saint Lords, there were also hundreds of Saint Lords and 5,000 Saint Emperor cultivators. They came with the force of a mountain, and the one who attracted the most attention and led this battle was the wife of the sect leader of the Nine Supremes. I don't know what this madam's cultivation is, but a half-saint expert launched a sneak attack, and it seems that this madam didn't even have the chance to defend herself. She took the full brunt of the attack, but the result was that the half-saint was killed by the backlash. It was an extreme way of dying, with his body crushed and his soul destroyed. What level of cultivation base was required to achieve this? When the news of the Qian family's patriarch's death spread, everyone in the Qian family was dumbfounded. That was a half-saint. He had gone all out and struck the target with all his might. But the target was unharmed while he himself was the one who had died from the recoil. It was a myth no matter how one looked at it. In the face of the Palace of Nine Supremes' all-encompassing attack, the Qian family could only put up a last-ditch struggle for a while. In just a few days, dozens of Qian family's supreme venerables were killed, and 3 Saint Emperors were crippled. 3,000 of their core forces, including Saint Kings and Saint Emperors, were all dead in the wilderness. The Qian family had asked for help everywhere, sacrificing their capital and making countless promises, but no one had responded. The Sacred Heart Palace and the Sacred Soul Palace pretended to be deaf and mute, while the other 2 families were afraid that the Palace of Nine Supremes would seize the opportunity to attack. They were desperately trying to please the Qian family. "You're at death's door, and you still want to drag us down with you?" 7 days later, the Qian family's forces were completely routed. Wherever the Palace of Nine Supremes passed, all the Qian family's shops were sealed. Their men were all driven out, and those who resisted were killed without mercy. On the 10th day, the Qian family announced their full surrender. However, the Palace of Nine Supremes made it clear that they would not accept a simple surrender, throwing out a dozen harsh conditions. If the Qian family accepted all of these conditions, the Qian family would be completely gone. The Qian family said that they needed to consider it, and asked for 3 days. The Palace of Nine Supremes agreed, but in these 3 days, they had taken all the Qian family's assets and properties as their own. When the Qian family said that they wanted to talk again 3 days later, they were shocked to find that there were a few more conditions. The Qian family had no choice but to accept all of the Palace of Nine Supremes' conditions. The Qian family members who had harmed Qian Duoduo and his family were all expelled from the family, and the cultivation base of the experts were all destroyed, leaving them to fend for themselves. The once flourishing family of the world's #1 financial magnate was finally removed from the bound of universe after 7 months of fighting with the residents of 9 Supremes. The Qian family's celestial luck banner was destroyed, no longer existing in the world. The entire bound of universe was shaken when this shocking news spread. If it had been in the past, there would have been experts from the 3 heavenly palaces who would have come to mediate and protect the family. At the very least, they would have tried to protect this celestial luck banner that had a considerable connection to the bound of universe's providence. Now, however, after Yun Yang's massacre, no one from the 3 heavenly palaces came forward. They had been pretending to be deaf and mute from the beginning. No one was stupid. It was a small matter to come forward and mediate, but to offend the bound of universe's supreme cloud because of this, they might also offend their own palace masters at the same time, and they might even offend the 4 great rulers. It was clear which was more important. I'd better watch the show. It's too dangerous. Chapter 1442. It had to be said that Ji Lingxi's question was unnecessary. The Qian family was in ruins now. Even if all the members of the Qian family knelt before little Fatty and asked him to be their ancestor, he would not be interested, let alone be the head of the family. Moreover, little Fatty really had no longing for the Qian family. Little Fatty Qian Duoduo was one of the founders of the Palace of 9 Supremes, the major domo who was second only to the emperor. After experiencing the process of building the Palace of 9 Supremes from scratch, his yearning for the Palace of 9 Supremes was enough to override everything else. The Palace of 9 Supremes was his home. Even if little Fatty was foolish and blinded by greed, he would not want to leave home. Moreover, Qian Duoduo was the one who understood the Palace of 9 Supremes the most, the one who could see the potential of the Palace of 9 Supremes. Little Fatty shook his head like a rattle drum. Gu Chaoyang sighed in disappointment. What Ji Lingxi had asked earlier was actually the result of Gu Chaoyang's prolonged pleading. It was not Yun Yang's intention at all. Gu Chaoyang had set his eyes on the position of the Palace of 9 Supremes major domo since the beginning of the merger. It could even be said that Gu Chaoyang had set his eyes on the position since the merger. He felt that no one would be more suitable than he was. Gu Chaoyang thought that his cultivation base and aptitude were probably at this level so far. Perhaps he could still become a saint after years of hard work. However, it was impossible for him to advance further. If there was no hope of advancing further, he would need something to hold the Palace of 9 Supremes. What could he do? Was he going to be a charlatan forever? The position of major domo was a job tailor-made for him. However, there was someone else in the position now, and it was someone he could never touch under normal circumstances. If Qian Duoduo did not resign, he would have no hope of ascending the position. It was also because of this reason that Gu Chaoyang had forcefully predicted God's will, hoping for a turning point. Using the Qian family's legend as a foundation, he had asked Ji Lingxi for Qian Duoduo's help and asked for Qian Duoduo's thoughts. If Qian Duoduo really returned to the Qian family and took charge of the family, Gu Chaoyang would naturally ascend the position. This would be a turning point for Gu Chaoyang, a 1 in a million chance. Since Ji Lingxi came to the bound of universe, Gu Chaoyang had helped her a great deal. It was out of courtesy that he had come forward to ask, but little Fatty had not thought of it at all. In fact, from the moment Ji Lingxi asked the question, little Fatty had lowered his head in contemplation. It looked like he was pondering Ji Lingxi's question, but he was actually sending a message to Yun Yang. Yun Yang replied through the 9 Supremes token. I didn't say that. Damn, I've been exposed. With Yun Yang's detailed reply, how could the Fatty not understand the situation before him? His gaze towards Gu Chaoyang was tinged with murderous intent. This old bastard, how dare he trick me? You want to gain power? Daring to target Lord Fatty's position? You don't want to think about it. Your father will make life difficult for you in the future. Ji Lingxi was also discussing with Gu Chaoyang. I've asked for you. Major Domo Qian has no intention of stepping down. Don't say this again in the future. Actually, I think it's good that you're a deputy major domo. Qian Duo is in charge of the residents of Nine Supreme's external business. After this battle against the Qian family, he'll probably spend more time traveling the trade routes outside. The family will definitely need another internal major domo. Such a large family business can't be managed by him alone. Qian Duo is the Palace of Nine Supreme's founding elder after all. It's already too much for me to help you this time. In the future, it's more important to build a good relationship. Gu Chaoyang thought about it and agreed that it was reasonable. In addition, he had only managed to find a turning point when Ji Lingxi's question was fruitless. The general trend was on Qian Duoduo's side. He would only be finding trouble for himself if he continued to oppose him. Gu Chaoyang had always been a man who obeyed fate. After the fruitless attempt this time, his resentment faded away, and he took the initiative to look for Qian Duo. Brother Qian, regarding the Qian family, you're from the Qian family after all, and you're the victim. Do you have any additional conditions? Just say it, we'll give you some advice. No matter what, I'll make sure this matter is done beautifully for you. Gu Chaoyang spoke in a tone of complete sincerity. Since they were going to work together in the future, of course, Gu Chaoyang had to build a relationship first. In spite of this, Qian Duo looked at this fellow, who was about to kick him out of his position warily. Brother Gu, you have something to say. Ha ha ha. Brother Gu, your name reminds me of hiring an assassin. Gu Chaoyang's face twitched. Brother Qian. Brother Gu, you're not really planning to hire an assassin, are you? Little Fatty chuckled as he looked at Gu Chaoyang. Gu Chaoyang felt like his stomach was about to explode. Is there something wrong with this little fatty? I'm here to express my goodwill and discuss a problem with you. What are you talking about? You must be joking, Brother Qian. Gu Chaoyang's usual arrogance came online at once as he said with a fake smile. Brother Qian, I have to say that you, Brother Qian, remind me of a young lady's bosom. Qian Duo put on a fake smile and said, Brother Gu, you're wrong. Can't a man have a bosom? You're being far-fetched. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Ha ha ha. Brother Qian's mind is bright. I'm impressed. Ha ha ha. Brother Gu's foresight is flawless. I'm impressed. Ha ha. Brother Qian. Ha ha. Brother Gu. Brother Qian, you still have to work hard. Brother Gu, a man's reputation has to be won on the battlefield. How can a crooked path last? I heard that Brother Gu has always followed heaven's will and accepted your fate. I hope that you won't change your original intention. Don't forget your original intention and follow through. Gu Chaoyang felt like his lungs were about to explode. Why is this fatty so annoying? It's your fortune that your father is willing to support you. Do you know how many people your father has actively supported in this lifetime? How dare you act so pretentiously? Gu Chaoyang had always thought highly of himself and looked askance at everyone in the world. It was so in Tianxian continent, and it was still the same when he came to the bound of universe. Back when he was facing Mr. Nian, he was still arrogant despite being imprisoned for a long time. He had schemed against Qian Duo, but now that he had taken the initiative to be friendly, he was ridiculed instead. It was only natural that he found it hard to accept. At this point, it was hard to continue, and the two parted on bad terms. On the other side, Ji Lingxi sent a message to Yun Yang. The Palace of Nine Supremes is too vast. It's inevitable that it'll be overstretched if there's only one major domo. Is it possible to add Gu Chaoyang as one of the major domo of the Palace of Nine Supremes? Qian Duo started the family as an elder. It's not appropriate for someone to be on equal footing with him all of a sudden, Yun Yang replied. Gu Chaoyang has to convince Qian Duo himself. Only then can both of them work together. Before Qian Duo is convinced, he can only be given part of the major domo's authority without an actual title. Ji Lingxi thought about it carefully and realized that what Yun Yang said made sense. Although Gu Chaoyang and Yun Yang were old acquaintances and had unfathomable means, most people did not know that she and Yun Yang were aware of this. If he were to appoint Gu Chaoyang directly, it would not only give off a feeling of nepotism, but it would also chill the hearts of the residents of Nine Supreme's elders. Ji Lingxi called Gu Chaoyang over discreetly and said, "We can only fulfill the majordomo's duty first. We still have to consider the title. If we want to set the title early, the first thing we have to do is to convince Qian Duoduo. It'll be even better if more people, including Qian Duoduo, recommend him. With Elder Gu's almighty ability, you can even predict God's will. What's a trifling matter? What's a trifling matter?" Gu Chaoyang was filled with bitterness now. Heaven's will was not to be deceived indeed. Gu Chaoyang was not courteous at all. He had schemed and planned to ascend early, but now he had to swallow his words. If he had known this would happen, why would he have played those petty tricks? Now that little fatty is like a snake when he sees me, avoiding me like the plague. I don't even have a target to aim for. How am I going to convince him? With little fatty standing in front of me, how can anyone recommend me? Speaking of friendship, they're old acquaintances. Due to this incident, he had almost become enemies with little fatty, and little fatty had become someone he couldn't get around. At least for now, little fatty was his immediate superior. He had actually fallen into a position where he could only work without a title. What the F***ck? F***ck. I've been calculating a few days ago, and there's a turning point, but there's a sudden change. Turns out that the turning point should be here. I've really shot myself in the foot. I've committed suicide. Gu Chaoyang was dispirited. Still, it's not impossible to handle this kid. With his personality that brightens up with a little bit of sunshine, I don't believe I can't coax him, as long as I'm careful in my training. King Hell, your father is old, but I actually have to be subservient and coax a kid carefully. Gu Chaoyang heaved a heavy sigh. How Gu Chaoyang would train Qian Duoduo had nothing to do with the grand scheme of things. The current focus was the Palace of Nine Supremes' trade routes. They had basically unified the martial world without any rivals. This also meant that there was a lot of work to be done. Almost everyone was so busy that their feet did not even touch the ground. Qian Duoduo often felt overwhelmed and powerless. It was actually a good thing to have a helper like Gu Chaoyang, especially now that he only had authority and a nameless identity. He also had to be careful of Qian Duoduo. To Qian Duoduo it was a joy. He would call Gu Chaoyang over every day to vent his frustrations when he had nothing better to do. As the war against the Qian family came to an end, the entire Palace of Nine Supremes plunged into another unprecedented bustle. In terms of combat strength, apart from some necessary security personnel, most of the other forces had withdrawn from the battlefield. The Palace of Nine Supremes' move allowed the other two noble families in the martial world to heave a sigh of relief. The Qian family was an established aristocratic family with a strong foundation. The market they had left behind was enough for the Palace of Nine Supremes to digest for a few years. These few years of buffer time was a rare breathing space for the two families. They still had to discuss their next step and confirm their strategy. The world of Jianghu became calm, and there were no waves. The training of the Palace of Nine Supremes' disciples was fully unleashed. Yunyang, Dongfang Haoran, and the others had long arrived outside the legendary Supreme Heaven Pavilion. It was Yin Yang's first time here. Questions arose wherever he looked, because all he could see was desolation. However, when he focused his gaze, it was a blur in front of him. Yin Yang's thoughts raced, and he instantly deduced that there was a special barrier in front of him. A layer of translucent membrane separated the two sides. Suddenly the weather changed. A bone-chilling wind howled. On the other side of the blurred field of vision, countless rays of golden light could be vaguely seen, spinning slowly. It was a spectacular sight. The place that's emitting the golden light is the Supreme Heaven Pavilion. Dongfang Haoran pointed with his finger. Is it possible to remove this layer that blurs one's vision? Yunyang asked curiously. It can't. Shiman Fanfu's gaze was solemn as he said, as long as the Supreme Heaven Pavilion doesn't move itself, even a Saint Pinnacle expert can't take a step into the blurry barrier. Yunyang thought about it and said, oh! He had long predicted that the blurry barrier would be difficult to penetrate. Compared to the blurry barrier, he was more concerned about the spinning golden light on the other side. The golden light seemed to be filled with an indescribable aura. This is the ancient land of desolation. The weather here is different from other places. Baigong Liuli said. The 5 winds change in a day here. They can scrape one's soul, flesh, bones, blood, and deific consciousness. Even cultivators like us who have reached the level of saint dare not take it lightly. You've just arrived. Don't treat it as an ordinary wind, and be careless. Yin Yang nodded in acknowledgement. Yin Yang was most proficient in the art of wind and cloud manifestation. Once he arrived, he realized that the wind was different. When the 3 lights shine together at night, it's when the Supreme Heaven Pavilion opens. These 3 lights refer to moonlight, starlight, and death glow. They're not the usual 3 lights of the sun, moon, and star. Dongfang Haoren said. Moonlight and starlight are no different from what we see normally. Only the death glow has the effect of sinking one's soul. Although the strength of our souls has reached the pinnacle of this world, and can't be shaken by ordinary forces, if we sink into it, our deific consciousness will waver, and it will hinder the saint path. Yin Yang nodded in acknowledgement. How much longer do we need to wait? Yin Yang asked in a low voice. When it's about time, the Supreme Heaven Pavilion will release the welcoming light. The number of lights released means how many people can enter this time. It's clear at a glance. The main reason why each palace trains more than one son of saint is because the number of welcoming lights in each round of the Supreme Heaven Pavilion is different. I see. Yin Yang asked. Have the sons of saints from your families arrived? Of course they've arrived a long time ago. Shiman Fanfu smiled faintly. Now they're just waiting for our welcoming light to appear. Why don't I see them? I can't smell any life force at all. They're already hiding in the saint's barrier. It's only natural that we can't sense any life force. We're already at the level of saints. So of course we're not afraid of the light, but they can't. They'll only wait when the welcoming light appears. They'll step onto the welcoming light at once and enter it. Only then will they not be harmed, and successfully pass the selection test. So we can only wait now. Yes, we can only wait, Dongfang Haoren said. From the moment the Supreme Heaven Pavilion appears, there will be a swirling golden light. The welcoming light may appear at any time within a month's time. As for the light of guidance, it would only last for an hour. This is something we can't do anything about. We can only wait for it to appear passively. There's no way to predict it, and there's no shortcut. Maybe the welcoming light will appear the day after the golden light appears. No one can say for sure. The 3 hegemons all had helpless looks on their faces as they spoke of this matter. The 4 of them walked quickly to the back of a barren hill. Going around the hill, Yin Yang realized that there were already 4 tents set up here. Outside each tent, there was a faint white glow. That was the saint's light that Dongfang Haoren and the others had imbued. Only a saint-level power like this could resist the dangerous weather for a long time. Inside the tent were of course Lai Kuangfeng Feng Patian, Huan Wenyuan and Lanting. Huan Wenyuan and Lanting were in the same tent. And in the last tent was Tian Fe's mystical beast, the Eagle King. Seeing Yin Yang's arrival, the Eagle King danced in joy, and was extremely cordial. Lord Supreme Cloud, are you here to go in as well? Yin Yang was at a loss for words, not knowing how to answer. Looking at Feng Patian, then at Lai Kuangfeng, then at the Orchid Pavilion's illusory Wenyuan, Yin Yang suddenly felt embarrassed. Why don't I not go in? Yin Yang said with a bitter face. It felt like he was snatching something from a child. Dongfang Haoren and the other 2 laughed. It might be difficult to have a chance to make fun of a saint-level expert in the future. If they did not laugh now, when would they? No way. Why not? I have the Palace of 9 Supremes, and my development prospects are better than the 3 heavenly palaces combined. I can definitely go further than all of you. Yin Yang's face was flushed. With my current cultivation base, I can't even get past myself if I go in and fight with them for the legacy. I'm just thick-skinned, not shameless. Being thick-skinned or not doesn't apply to the current situation. It's fine if others don't go in. It's just a personal choice, but you have to go in. Dongfang Haoren said seriously. If there's only one ray of welcoming light this time, it'll be you going in. If there's one more ray of welcoming light, it's none of your business who goes in and who doesn't. You have to go anyway. Why is that? Yin Yang really could not figure it out. I don't belong to the 3 heavenly palaces. Besides, the residence of 9 supremes has its own legacy. So why would we need the Supreme Heaven Pavilion's welcoming? The reason is very simple. Up until now, in every Supreme Heavenly Pavilion selection, we have only received the inheritance of this heavenly palace. There should be a higher level inheritance above this, a higher level inheritance that we have yet to obtain. Dongfang Haoran said seriously, we sincerely hope that you can get it, and only you have a chance of getting it. Throughout the history of Supreme Heaven Pavilion selections, the highest they can go is only the 3rd level. However, Supreme Heaven Pavilion has a total of 7 levels, and the difference is obvious. Going up to the 3rd level is already the limit of our 3 heavenly palaces. As long as we get the document of inheritance, we can inherit the 3 heavenly palaces. Dongfang Haoran's face was slightly twisted. Back then, I used all my strength and tried to step into the 4th level, but I only got to the 8th step out of the 9 steps of the 4th level, before I was kicked down. Kicked down? Yin Yang was stunned. There's actually someone in Supreme Heaven Pavilion? It's the transformation of spiritual energy into martial arts. Shiman Fan sighed. I didn't expect you to be 1 level higher than me. I'm also at the 8th level. Beigong Liuli was smug. Shiman Fan was helpless. Beigong, we've known each other for tens of thousands of years, but I never thought that you'd be so despicable. The 1st level can give you the benefit of strengthening your cultivation base, increasing your ability by 10%. The 2nd level can strengthen your deific consciousness, increasing your cultivation base by another 20%. The 3rd level can strengthen your soul, doubling your ability again. Dongfang Haoran said slowly. So, whether you can break our record or not, whether you can get the legacy or not, the benefits you can get from entering are already great benefits. The candidates of the 3 heavenly palaces can only enter once in their lives. Yin Yang's curiosity was piqued. Chapter 1443. Even so, I still feel embarrassed. This is like a middle-aged man and a child going to a private school together. Although they both benefit and the adults benefit more, it still feels like an adult bullying a child. Yin Yang sighed in self-deprecation. The 3 rulers guffawed. Just like what Shiman Huanyu had said earlier, the opportunity to make fun of a ruler was too rare. It had to be grasped as it would not come again. Of course, it was also because Yin Yang's improvement was too fast. Whether or not there would be a chance to make fun of him in the future was another matter altogether. Whether or not he dared to do so was the key. No matter what kind of joke a ruler made, how many people dared to make fun of it? It was not because they could not, but because they did not dare to. On the other side, Feng Patian, Huan Wenyuan, Lanting Lai Kuangfeng, and the others were also feeling complicated and indescribable. At the same time, they deeply felt that the other sons of God had really died too unjustly. Yin Yang did not care about the position of the masters of the 3 heavenly palaces at all. It was the 3 rulers who fought for it, almost forcing it on him while crying and screaming. What was there to fight for? It was such a figure who wanted to make Yin Yang an imaginary enemy. But in the end, they died in his hands one after another. Going against such a powerhouse, if you don't die, who will? Now, it seemed that they were wronged but not wronged at all. Yin Yang had now ascended to the same level as the 3 rulers. Even if he was still not there, his realm was already synchronized. How could such a character be interested in the position of palace master of the 3 heavenly palaces? Moreover, the palace of 9 supremes now possessed a foundation and influence that surpassed that of the 3 heavenly palaces. Perhaps his overall ability was still inferior, but his potential had to be calculated the other way around. The former was like the rising sun, gradually flourishing, while the latter was like the sun that had passed the middle of the sky and would eventually set. It was only a matter of time before he truly surpassed them. Why would such a person come to fight for the position of palace lord with them? They were no longer on the same level. He even thought it was embarrassing to do the same thing as them and disdained to do it. If he had known that this would happen, why did so many people die? In the end, Wasn't it because he didn't have enough confidence in himself? Huan Wenyuan, on the other hand, had another thought. When he first saw Yun Yang, he thought that he was just an amateur who had popped out of nowhere. Although he had some luck, it was only a bit of luck. Now, it seemed that he could only look up to him. How could the word luck describe even 1,000th of it? If such a person was born in the 3 great heavenly palaces, would he be able to grow to such a level? Would he perish early in the battle for power? Yun Yang was already a saint now. Although he and the others had broken through to the Saint Lord level thousands of years ago, it was difficult for them to progress further. All of them had stopped at the first level of the Saint Lord level. The gap between them was too great. No, come to think of it, how old was Yun Yang? How long had he been cultivating? They looked about the same age as Yun Yang, but that was only in appearance. In terms of actual age, how much older were they compared to Yun Yang? Thinking of this, he could not help but sigh, and his morale became even lower. Should I fight with Lanting for the position of Palace Lord? Or go out to roam Jianghu? Or to kill demons? As time passed, the flowing golden light within the barrier grew brighter, while the blurry feeling that the barrier gave off became fainter. Suddenly, amidst the howling wind, several beams of golden light shot out without warning. Dongfang Haoran hollered, "The light of induction is here. Everyone after entering, go and find your own opportunities. Don't fight each other and waste your energy." Shiman Faf roared as well. "Yun Yang, they are all juniors. Don't lose your dignity." Yun Yang's nose twisted in anger. "What do you mean by that? Are you worried that I'll harm your disciples inside? Am I that kind of person?" Unbeknownst to him, the 3 rulers were not worried that Yun Yang would harm them. Instead, they were worried that their juniors would do something inappropriate and offend Yun Yang. After all, there was a grudge between them. The death of the 3 rulers' children was not far away, proving that Yun Yang was not a magnanimous person. Once he struck, he would not show mercy. The golden light grew brighter and brighter. Almost in the blink of an eye, the golden light expanded abruptly and turned into golden bridges, solidifying before their eyes. The group confirmed the number again and again, and fell into a state of shock. What was going on? Yun Yang, the Eagle King, and the 4 from the 3 celestial palaces were a total of 6 people, who planned to enter the Supreme Heaven Pavilion. But 7 beams of golden light had appeared. Who would the remaining 1 be given to? It was impossible for Dongfang Haoran, and the other 2. However, other than the 3 of them, there were no other living people here. Right at this moment, a gray shadow suddenly flew over. This person was completely shrouded in a chilling wind, and when he stood still, he was already bathed in golden light. What he saw was a guest wearing a crown and a yellow robe. This was a king. Everyone looked again, only to see that the yin-chi surrounding the person was very strange, as if they could see the appearance of the person clearly, but to say that they could not really see it clearly, it made them click their tongues in wonder. The newcomer chuckled and said, "The concourse of the underworld is here to join in as well." Lord Supreme Cloud, it's been a long time. Yin Yang's voice came from the golden light with a warm smile. "Are you Lord Yama?" The gray shadow laughed. "Lord Supreme Cloud, you have a good memory. I am indeed Yama." Yin Yang's faint chuckle came again. "I've been wondering when the concourse of the underworld would appear in this realm. Whether it was necessary for you to come to the Supreme Heaven Pavilion's selection this time. I didn't expect you all to come anyway." King Yama's voice was heard again. "Honestly, we didn't want to come. Perhaps the next Supreme Heaven Pavilion selection would be a better time for us to enter the realm. But we really need a base here in the Bound of Universe. The underworld is newly established, and everything has to start from scratch. We really have nothing. We desperately need to be acknowledged by this heaven and earth. We're not like the Celestial Court. The Celestial Court has existed for a long time. Even when it was destroyed and rebuilt, its foundation still exists. We, on the other hand, have no foundation at all, so we could only resort to this trick." Yun Yang said, "I see. But why are you here this time?" King Yama wore a reluctant expression and said bitterly, "I didn't come willingly. No one was willing to come either. I lost the finger-guessing game, so I had to come." Everyone who heard King Yama's last sentence instinctively rolled their eyes. This was a good thing that others could not even dream of, yet none of them were willing to come. The one who came in the end actually came because he lost the finger-guessing game. This was even more arrogant than Yun Yang, who did not want adults to bully children. Dongfang Haoran, Shiman Fafu, and the others frowned deeply, their suspicions clouding their minds. Who was this person? What King Yama? What organization did this person belong to? Why did such an organization pop up out of nowhere? Their tone was so arrogant, and their target was actually the same level as the 3 heavenly palaces. Moreover, this fellow, why did he not look like a living person? However, he did not look like a dead person, much less a spirit. What was going on? The 3 rulers' vision was incomparable to an ordinary person's. They had instantly noticed the peculiarity of King Yama's concourse of the underworld's cultivation method. The chilly wind, the gloomy clouds, and the air that obscured one's vision. It was not an ordinary cultivation method. How could they not be suspicious? Yun Yang obviously knew about these questions, but why had he never mentioned them? For hundreds of thousands of years, there had only been 3 heavenly palaces, and at most Tian Fa, who were qualified to enter the Supreme Heaven Pavilion's selection. No other sects were qualified. It was only when the residence of 9 Supremes rose, and became the Palace of 9 Supremes, and when Yun Yang became a saint, and attained the level of a ruler, that the Palace of 9 Supremes truly became another organization that was qualified to participate in the Supreme Heaven Pavilion's selection. How could another one suddenly appear? Yun Yang said, "Sai, your cultivation methods are unique. Although they point to the path of Tao, there's another end to them. If you really continue on this path, I'm afraid you won't be able to return to the mortal realm anymore. I know that my brothers have long known this and no longer have any doubts. But do you have any regrets? I can help." King Yinluo's voice grew deeper. Lord Supreme Cloud is still wise and farsighted. After this selection we'll really... Sai, what's the point of saying all that? Brother Yin, we have you and your sect in the mortal realm anyway. If we have any needs, we'll naturally come to you. We won't hold back. Yun Yang was beaming. Well said, it's good that you won't hold back. I have about 10 chi of yin here. Remember to bring them back for your brothers when you return. Chi of yin? King Yinluo exclaimed in delight. Great. That's great. Brother Yin, how did you know that we're lacking this now? Do you have any more? How many more? We really need this. This fellow was really blunt. Yun Yang laughed without feeling offended and said, I'll try my best to gather them. However, this is something that the world of the living doesn't have. And it's even more taboo. I think we can only get 15 at most. Any more and it'll be impossible. 15? That's more than enough. King Yinluo guffawed, obviously overjoyed. We couldn't control it for now. But with this chi of yin, at most a year later, you know, Yin Yang's expression was one of understanding. Of course, ha ha. But Tianxian Continent, old Marshal Qiu, old Mistress Shengguan, old Grand Commandant Fang. You all know them. King Yinluo guffawed. I didn't hear anything. What did you say just now? I didn't say anything. Yin Yang chortled overjoyed. Dongfang Haoran was dumbfounded. What did they say? I didn't understand a single word. Shiman Haoran repeated. Yes, I heard every word and understood them, but I don't know what they meant. Beigong Liuli was speechless. I thought both of you knew, and waited for you to explain. In the end, both of you farted one after another. It's so smelly, it's all **T. They seem to have some sort of shady deal? I think so too, but I don't understand. At this moment, the golden light on the other side surged again. The golden bridges beneath everyone's feet solidified, revealing a plaque on each bridge. Lai Kuangfeng was the first to move, writing on the plaque, East Celestial Palace Lai Kuangfeng. With the last stroke, the 7 words suddenly glowed with a dazzling golden light. Then, Lai Kuangfeng disappeared along with the plaque. Western Heaven Holy Palace Feng Patian. Northern Wasteland Demonic Palace Mirage Abyss. Northern Wasteland Demonic Palace Lanting. Tian Fa Holy Land Ingli. The man in gray King Yinluo wrote. Concourse of the Underworld Yama. Yin Yang thought about it and wrote. Yin Yang. He only wrote a name, but did not fill in the palace of 9 supremes. Still, the golden light shone brightly and disappeared. When the 7 people were gone, the golden bridge retracted abruptly and disappeared with a swoosh, as if it had never existed. The golden light that was still spinning dimmed as well. Everything went smoothly, and everyone went in. Only then did Dongfang Haoran turn his head in confusion. There are strange things every year, but not as many as this year. This old man has never seen such a strange thing in his life. With Yin Yang as an anomaly, everything is strange. What I'm more concerned about is that man in gray. What kind of organization is that King Yinluo in concourse of the underworld? Yin Yang seems to be very serious about it, and he's trying to befriend them. It's definitely extraordinary. Why do you think Yin Yang went in directly without writing his sect? When did that concourse of the underworld come out? They have the qualification to enter the Supreme Heaven Pavilion, but I've never heard of them before. This is unbelievable. The 3 of them looked at each other, countless questions stuck in their chests, almost suffocating them to the point of illness. The 3 of them had always boasted that they were experts who had everything in the world under their control. Who would have thought that so many things that they did not know about would happen today? It was truly strange. Only 3,700 words today. 300 left to be filled tomorrow. GT. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.